Chapter 891. When he used his full strength, his strength exceeded 500,000 kilograms. Even a god-tier powerhouse would be injured if he took a punch from Wang Feng. After absorbing the million-year soul ring, Wang Feng didn't immediately sense the changes in his body. He had been experimenting with his dark angel martial soul over the past few days. At the same time, he had been sensing the changes in his body. This was why he thought of 3 conditions to defeat Bibidon. His 9th soul ring had to fuse with his soul bone and solidify his spiritual power. In essence, it was still the foundation of a soul master. After all, this was the Douluo world. Apart from that, Long Xie's 2 arm bones also gave Wang Feng 2 different powerful soul skills. The other 2 were passive soul skills. The soul skill given by the million-year soul ring was Long Xie's last move. It had severely injured the 2 of them. It was called the ultimate evil annihilation. The second condition was simple. The soul ring could transform into Long Xie. He had 90% of his previous abilities and could transform into a true dragon. Although there weren't many soul skills, the other abilities given by the million-year soul ring were stronger. Apart from the ability to absorb evil thoughts, it also gave Wang Feng a strong body. At the same time, the White Lotus abilities had changed greatly. These all needed time to be tested. After staying in the Great Star Do Forest for a few days, Wang Feng decided to leave temporarily. He wanted to return to Heaven Do City to see Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqing, and the others. He wanted to tell them that he was safe. After that, he would head to the extreme north to cultivate for a year and search for his 9th soul ring. Judging from Bibidon's current situation, he probably wouldn't do anything rash for a while. He would focus on breaking through to the god tier. After a few days, Wang Feng returned to Heaven Do City. It had been so many years since Wang Feng stepped into this city. However, this city was now shrouded in a dark cloud. De Ming and Air Ming must have been sacrificed to Little 3. Wang Feng sighed as he looked at the city. Perhaps this was the power of Little 3's world. It was difficult to change what belonged to him. However, it wouldn't be difficult for Little 3 to be revived after De Ming and Air Ming became god tier. As for Little 3's attack on Bibidong, Wang Feng could also understand. Tang San must have thought that Bibidong was going to kill him, so he acted in time and lured the 4-titled Douluo away. He had just broken through, and he had used such a powerful skill. He must have expended a lot of energy. Even if he couldn't defeat those 4-titled Douluo, he should be able to escape unscathed. He was probably reviving Xiao Wu right now. Little 3 had inherited the deity position of the sea god, and Xiao Wu's main body had also consumed 2 immortal herbs. With Little 3's strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to revive Little Wu in the ice-fire Yin-Yang well. I wonder how they are doing? Wang Feng walked into the city and discovered that the once bustling Heaven Do City was now sparsely populated. A few years ago there were still many soul cultivators on the street. But now, the number of soul cultivators on the streets had decreased by more than half. It seemed like the influence of the Martial Soul Alliance wasn't ordinary. That was because the Martial Soul Alliance hadn't started a war yet. There was only one possibility for the decrease in soul masters. Most of them had sought refuge in the cities under the Martial Soul Alliance's jurisdiction. The number of soul masters in the Heaven Do Empire's imperial city would be greatly reduced. The Martial Soul Temple in the center had been abandoned long ago. Without the Martial Soul Temple, it was very troublesome for the countless soul masters in the city to conduct soul master appraisals. It was even more troublesome to enter the soul hunting forest and hunt soul beasts. Most of them had gone to the setting sun forest. The Heaven Do Empire had also organized and established the Heaven Do Sacred Hall, a special soul master organization. There were similar organizations around Heaven Do City that could barely replace the Martial Soul Temple. However, this kind of organization required a large number of high-level soul masters to hold down the fort. It also required powerful soul masters and a legion of knights to guard it. They were in charge of the order of the soul masters in the city. These functions weren't something that ordinary soldiers could perform. It was a huge drain on the soul masters in the Heaven Do Empire. Wang Feng walked around Heaven Do City as he sensed the changes over the years. He was wearing the same attire as when he was 9-1. The 9-1 incident had happened a long time ago, so it wasn't very eye-catching. Not long after, Wang Feng arrived at the Shrek Academy. However, the Shrek Academy seemed a little empty at this moment. There weren't many disciples coming in and out. With Wang Feng's spiritual power, he couldn't sense the auras of any masters in the academy. They didn't seem to be here? Seeing this, Wang Fengxin's heart jumped. Where are they? Logically speaking, with the Martial Soul Alliance's advantage, they didn't start a war. The two empires couldn't find an excuse or reason to start a war. Now that the Shrek Academy was fully supported by the Heaven Do Empire, where could they go if they weren't here? Wang Feng grabbed a student and asked him a few questions. Teachers? The teachers all brought the students to hunt soul beasts. Ever since the Martial Soul Alliance was established, many young soul masters joined our Shrek Academy. However, because there are too many young soul masters, the teachers are too busy. The student sighed and said, usually, teachers with more than 5 disciples are a threat. If it's in the soul hunting forest, it's not a big deal. However, if they enter the setting sun forest, their lives will be in danger. Because of this, several of our teachers have been seriously injured in the past few days. Also, without the soul hunting forest, the teachers of the Empire and the Academy led their teams into the setting sun forest and killed too many soul beasts. They even caused riots sometimes. Not only the teachers of the Shrek Academy, but the other academies of the Heaven Do Empire and the struggling academies, all suffered different degrees of losses. Hearing this, Wang Feng fell silent. There are 30 days in a month now. For half a month, the teachers are in the setting sun forest, the student continued. There's also the newly established Heaven Do Sacred Hall. Some of the teachers of the Shrek Academy also joined to manage the Order of the Soul Masters in Heaven Do City. 2 years ago, the people of the Martial Soul Temple all left Heaven Do City. During those 2 years, the Order of the Soul Masters in Heaven Do City fell into extreme chaos. There were often soul masters fighting in the city, and there were many casualties. This year, it's been a little better. However, the teachers of the Shrek Academy are all seriously injured. I don't know how long they can last. The Martial Soul Temple is too important to the order of the world of soul masters. Actually, I don't think it's a bad thing for the Academy and the Empire to join the Martial Soul Alliance. At the end, the student whispered, in the past, I could still receive a portion of gold soul coins from the Martial Soul Temple every month. Now, the Heaven Do Sacred Hall doesn't have this practice. I just joined the Shrek Academy recently. I'm 18 years old and have just reached rank 30. It's been a long time. But I need to wait for the next batch of soul masters in a month and a half. Only then can I get a soul ring. The student shrugged. If it was in the past, I could still go to the soul hunting forest a few hundred kilometers away from Heaven Do City and team up with my classmates to hunt soul beasts. But now, we don't dare to go to the setting sun forest. As for the Great Star Do Forest, we don't dare to go there. After listening to this student, Wang Feng fell silent for a long time. Chapter 892. Indeed. Bibidon could be said to have executed the 3-year alliance and 5-year empire plan perfectly. This student could be considered a representative of mid-tier and low-tier soul masters. As time passed, the Martial Soul Alliance's soul masters would become stronger and stronger. The stronger the soul masters were, the more they would be able to promote the development of various industries. Have you guys never thought of taking over the soul hunting forest? Wang Feng asked. We have. The student pursed his lips. A year ago, there were a few small-scale battles over the resources in the soul hunting forest. There were even titled Douluo involved in the battles. However, the soul-hunting forest has been under the jurisdiction of the martial soul hall since ancient times. It's not right to take it by force. Furthermore, the martial soul hall's soul master teams guarding the soul-hunting forest are very strong. They are at least soul Douluo and titled Douluo as witnesses. We can't take it, the student whispered. If you want to find teacher and the rest, you can only try your luck in the setting sun forest. Oh yes, a few of our famous seniors from the Shrek Academy returned a few days ago. I heard that they were planning to organize a group to take over the nearby soul-hunting forest. I wonder how the situation is now? The Martial Soul Alliance has the most control over the soul-hunting forest around Heaven Do City. They even sent a few titled Douluo to guard the entrances. Previously, the Sword Douluo and Bone Douluo from the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile sect personally went to the Martial Soul Alliance to discuss, but they were chased out. Wang Feng guessed that the students he was talking about were Osk, Ma Hongjun, and Ning Rongrong. They were very strong now. Every one of them was a soul Douluo. They had improved so much in just 3 years. After returning and discovering the situation, they would definitely not sit back and do nothing. Through this student, the changes in the continent's forces could be said to be very clear. If this continued, there would only be one outcome. Either the two empires could no longer hold back and start a war with the Martial Soul Alliance, or they would die a slow death. In another year at most, the strength of the two empires would be greatly reduced due to this imbalance between the two empires. When Bibidon became a god, he would kill the powerful individuals of the two empires and establish the Martial Soul Empire. He would then be able to absorb the powers of the two empires. The continent had indeed been settled. There was no need to start a war. It was even possible that they would join the Martial Soul Alliance if they couldn't take it anymore. Regardless of enmity and position, Wang Feng felt that this kind of unification was not a bad thing. After thinking about it, Wang Fengxin sighed. Thank you. Wang Feng walked towards the soul-hunting forest outside of Heaven Do City. There were many soul-hunting forests on the continent, some big and some small. The soul-hunting forest outside of Heaven Do City was smaller than the setting sun forest, but it wasn't that dangerous. Most of the soul beasts inside were under 10,000 years old, but there were quite a few 10,000-year soul beasts. It was much better than Sunset Forest. In truth, the setting sun forest wasn't all that dangerous. However, due to the influx of soul cultivators, many soul beasts had died. Now that the soul beasts inside were rampaging, it was much more dangerous than before. After not coming back for a few years, the changes in the situation of the continent made Wang Feng feel that he was almost out of touch with the continent. For Wang Feng, the journey of several hundred miles only took a little more than 10 minutes. Before he arrived, Wang Feng sensed voices coming from behind him. These soul Douluo are no match for us. Xiao Ao, give me a sausage. I want to take revenge for my captain. Fatty, be careful. Be careful of titled Douluo. Rongrong, rest for a while. I heard that Zhuoqing has returned to the Star Luo Empire and discussed with Boss Dai. They plan to ally with the Heaven Do Empire and wage war against the Martial Soul Alliance. When the time comes, we can snatch back these territories and the soul-hunting forest. Hey, I received a letter from Third Brother yesterday. He's in the Clear Sky sect now. He'll be back tomorrow at the latest. Oh yes, he said that he has good news for us. I wonder what it is. Be careful. They're here for reinforcements. Damn, why are they here? Fatty, be careful. There's a titled Douluo. A calm voice sounded from afar. Following this, there was a battle. Wang Feng's eyes were dim. He could sense everything clearly even though they were several thousand meters away. The Martial Soul Hall couldn't let the Heaven Do Empire take away such important soul beast resource areas so easily. Although there was no war, these special resource areas had become areas that they had to fight for. To put it bluntly, these places represented whether they could nurture more soul masters. For example, The higher-level soul-hunting forest was very important to many mid-tier and high-level soul masters. It's too titled Douluo from the Martial Soul Hall. Haven't you seen enough? Wang Feng swept his gaze across the distance. The 5 of them should be able to defeat them, but, in the distance, outside the soul-hunting forest, Hulayina led 2 titled Douluo and a small team of more than 10 high-tier soul masters into this place. She immediately saw Ma Hongjun and the rest. "It's you?" Hulayina was dressed in black. She had a cold expression on her face. "I don't want to make things difficult for you. If you want to obtain the right to enter the soul-hunting forest for your academy, you can join the Martial Soul Alliance. Other than that, there's no other choice. Otherwise, you can go to the Setting Sun Forest." There were 2 titled Douluo behind her. They looked to be in their 70s. When they saw Ma Hongjun and the rest, they were a little shocked. They seemed to be astonished by their soul power rank. "Cut the crap. It's impossible for us to join the Martial Soul Alliance," Ma Hongjun shouted. "Hulayina, you let us go last time. But this time, you can do whatever you want. You haven't announced it to the world yet, right? The white-clothed Popetiff from the Martial Soul Hall is our captain in disguise? Look at how stupid and incompetent the Martial Soul Hall is. Our captain turned you into the white-clothed Popetiff, asking us to join a stupid, incompetent, and self-centered organization? That's simply a dream. And that Pope Bibidon, she killed our captain. We, the Shrek's 7 monsters, will avenge our captain sooner or later." Ma Hongjuan's face turned red as he spoke. "That's right," Oscar laughed coldly. "We'll take revenge sooner or later. Today, we'll collect some interest." Shen Lingqi and Bai Qinxiang walked over to the 2 of them. Although Ning Rongrong was alone and lonely, she pursed her lips and lost a lot of weight. Her face was a little pale, but her eyes were incomparably cold. She wasn't sad. She was just a little resentful. Hearing this, Hulayina clenched her fist. After a moment of silence, she said plainly, "He's not dead. You can't avenge him either. Don't waste your life." After she finished speaking, Ma Hongjun and the rest were stunned. P.S. It's a little late. Chapter 893. He's not dead? Didn't you say that he was already dead? Why isn't he dead now? They remembered clearly what happened on the Sea God's Island. Hulayina had said that when she brought them away. Why did she change her mind now? "I don't want to talk nonsense with you," Hulayina said. "I don't want to fight with you either. You can't beat us. We can't give you this soul-hunting forest. Our martial spirit palace spent a lot of effort to build this place a long time ago. How can we just give it to you? I'll say it again. Unless you join the Martial Soul Alliance. Otherwise." Hulayina's eyes flashed coldly as she said this. "Can't beat you? Just based on the 2 titled Douluo behind you? We're not afraid," Oscar said. "We're not trying to snatch your soul-hunting forest. We just want you to open it to us, even if we have to pay a certain amount of gold soul coins." Oscar sighed as he said this. He knew that the Martial Soul Alliance was doing this to force them to join them. Actually, they didn't care. They only came here for the sake of the Academy. Why would the Martial Soul Alliance open the soul-hunting forest to the Shrek Academy for some gold soul coins? Hulayina shook her head and said plainly, "Sure. According to the rules of our alliance, soul masters who don't belong to the Martial Soul Alliance have to pay 100,000 gold soul coins per person to enter the soul-hunting forest. If you can pay us, we can open it to you too. Otherwise, I advise you to leave quickly." They were speechless. This was even more impossible. "I think you're just trying to mess with our minds." Ma Hongjun put his hands on his hips and pointed at Hulayina. "Are you afraid of us? Are you trying to use Captain's information to mess us up so that we won't be able to fight? We don't believe your nonsense." Hulayina's eyes flashed coldly as she heard this. "Since that's the case, there's no other way. Elder Tian Ye and Elder Di Long, capture them and bring them back to the Alliance in the name of robbing them of the soul-hunting forest." The Pope will make the decision then. Temple's enforcers, assist the two elders. After she finished speaking, Hulaina took 2 steps back. The 2 titled Douluo behind him walked forward. 9 soul rings lit up from their bodies one after another, even though it was just a standard configuration. However, the powerful auras of the 2 titled Douluo still gave everyone a lot of pressure. At the same time, the law enforcement team behind Hulaina also stepped forward. The Martial Soul Alliance now covered more than half of the continent's surface area, excluding the various large soul beast forests. It could be said that less than 30% of the 2 empires' territory remained, and many of the cities belonged to the 2 empires in name. However, the various large clans and powerful merchant guilds in the cities all joined the Martial Spirit Alliance. Even the various duchies under the 2 empires were under the influence of the Martial Spirit Alliance. These areas of influence included all sorts of resources and territories that were guarded by soul masters from the Martial Soul Alliance. The Soul Hunting Forest, which was the most important strategic resource, was guarded by the Martial Soul Alliance's Holy Temple enforcers and titled Dalu. Especially in the Heaven Do Empire, the Martial Soul Alliance's Holy Temple enforcers usually had more than 20 people. There were at least 3 to 5 auxiliary-type soul masters, more than 10 assault-type or agility-type soul masters, around 3 defense-type soul masters, and around 3 control-type soul masters. They were all above rank 60. There were at least 2 soul Douluo. Normally, there would be around 2 law enforcement teams in each soul hunting forest. Apart from the law enforcement teams, there were also hundreds of soul hunting knights in the soul hunting forest. They were considered regular soldiers, and their abilities were between rank 30 and rank 50. They were responsible for patrolling the various entrances to the soul hunting forest. He watched as the 2 titled Douluo and the 20-odd members of the enforcement team lit up their martial souls one after another. Ma Hongjun and the rest became wary. They had easily defeated a soul-hunting knight legion that was guarding the soul-hunting forest. They had thought that the Martial Soul Alliance's defense of the soul-hunting forest was only SOSO. However, after seeing the 2 titled Douluo and the 20-odd law enforcement team, they realized how strong the Martial Soul Alliance was. Disregarding the number of normal soldiers, the Martial Soul Alliance was probably the only organization that could afford to have so many mid-tier and high-tier soul masters. One had to know that this was merely the entrance. It's a pity that Zhu Qing and Boss Dai aren't around. Oscar sighed. Otherwise, these 2 titled Douluo, who aren't even rank 93, could easily deal with them. The main reason was that the law enforcement team had 3 control-type soul masters above rank 70, 3 auxiliary-type soul masters above rank 60, and 1 auxiliary-type soul master above rank 70. The rest of the assault-type soul masters were all around rank 70. Although they were all soul Douluo and had trained on the Sea God's Island, they were all very strong. They also had Ning Rongrong, who was super supportive. However, it was unrealistic to deal with these people from the Martial Soul Alliance. Among them, the 2 titled Douluo were not the most terrifying. It was the Holy Lady, Hulaina. She had also participated in the Sea God's trial on the Sea God's Island. She was very strong. Furthermore, she was the most difficult control-type soul master to deal with. Just as both parties were about to draw their swords, a voice suddenly sounded. "I'm afraid your Pope won't be able to make a decision." This voice was clear and full of spirit. It also had a vast aura. Everyone looked over and realized that 2 figures had landed in front of them. They were Tang San and Xiao Wu. However, right now, Tang San's aura was even thicker and more powerful. As soon as he landed, his 9 soul rings instantly blossomed. 5 black and 4 red. Tang San was already a titled Dalu. Just the aura that his soul rings gave off was enough to intimidate the 2 titled Douluo and the 20-odd members of the Sacred Temple's law enforcement team. Hulaina was startled as she looked at Tang San in shock. When they were on the Sea God's Island, Tang San still had 2 soul rings. 2 yellow and 1 purple soul ring. But now they were all black or red. Right now, the other figure beside Tang San attracted the attention of Ma Hongjun and the rest. It was Xiao Wu. It wasn't Xiao Wu's physical body that didn't have a consciousness. It was Xiao Wu with a soul. From Xiao Wu's lively eyes, they could tell that this was the real Xiao Wu. Third brother, Xiao Wu. Ma Hongjun opened his mouth wide and looked at the two of them in disbelief. Xiao Wu, you've really come back to life? Xiao Wu giggled and looked at everyone. Long time no see, partners. I've always been in a half-spirit state. That's right, I've come back to life. Everyone looked at her in disbelief. Tang San smiled. His eyes were vast, but there was a heavy look in them. Chapter 894. That day, he had used all his strength to kill Bibidon. However, such a divine skill naturally consumed a lot of energy. He was pursued by 4 titled Douluo, but he still managed to escape safely in the end. After that, he immediately returned to the Icefire Yin-Yang well. He used that treasure ground and the light of the sea god to revive Xiao Wu. However, he lost a few soul rings. His abilities were reduced. Fortunately, he was in the setting sun forest. Therefore, Tang San immediately found several soul beasts in the setting sun forest to replenish his soul rings. His abilities returned to that of a titled Dalu. At the same time, he added 2 soul rings to his clear sky hammer. His abilities reached the peak of rank 94. Tang San was confident that he could defeat the sword Douluo, who was at rank 97. Xiao Wu's body had been tempered on the sea god's island, and she had accumulated a lot of energy. After accompanying Tang San to kill some evil soul beasts in the setting sun forest, her soul power had reached rank 70 after obtaining soul rings. After that, Tang San helped his mother recover in the Icefire Yin-Yang well. He used his blue-silver domain, which had already evolved, to restore her true body. After that, they walked out of the setting sun forest and returned to the clear sky sect with Tang Hao. After settling these matters, Tang San returned to Heaven Do City. After hearing the news, he immediately rushed over. Little San, didn't you say that you would be back tomorrow? Oscar asked curiously. I've settled the matters in the clear sky sect in advance, so I wanted to come back first. Tang San's gaze landed on Hulaina. He slowly said, Hulaina, you've helped us this time. We don't want to make things difficult for you this time. As for the soul-hunting forest, Tang San looked at the 2 titled Douluo and said, We can leave. This is your place. We have no right to interfere. However, you have to protect it. After speaking, Tang San turned around and left. Hearing this, Hulaina frowned. She didn't know what Tang San meant. To be precise, Hulaina didn't understand what Tang San said when he first appeared. You think you can come and go as you please? Does your family own this place? The 2 titled Douluo were intimidated by Tang San's aura, and they took a few steps back. They were both shocked and furious. At this moment, a glimmer of light flashed in their eyes. This was especially true for the Earth Dragon Douluo. Among the many titled Douluo, he was known for his strength, and his temper was rather irritable. His 7th soul ring lit up, and his martial soul true body appeared. He transformed into a horned earth dragon that was over 10 meters long. Its dark brown skin was covered with bright brown scales, and there was a single pitch-black horn on its head that shone coldly. Elder D. Long. Hulaina sighed in her heart. She was well aware of Tang San's strength. When he left the sea god's island, he was only in the 80s. Now, he had become a titled Douluo, and his 9th soul ring was a 100,000-year one. What did this mean? But it was too late. As the soul rings on the Elder D. Long's body lit up, the air suddenly seemed to be compressed by a few times. Air currents gathered around this huge earth dragon, and he roared as he charged towards Tang San. With every step he took, the ground trembled intensely. If not for the fact that Ma Hongjun and the rest had high cultivations, they might not even be able to stand properly. That momentum gave them a pressure that was as heavy as Mount Tai, and caused them to be locked in place. The ground seemed to have a magnet that sucked in their bodies. They knew that this was the Earth Dragon Douluo's powerful soul skill. However, just as the Earth Dragon Douluo was about to charge towards Tang San snorted coldly. The trident in his hand suddenly flashed, and Tang San's glabella lit up. The soul rings on his body flickered, and his body was like a fried dough twist. With his feet as an axis, he propelled his entire body, and the trident was like a clear sky hammer as he slashed it behind him. In an instant, the huge body of the Earth Dragon, which had the power to break 1,000 caddies, was sent flying more than 10 meters away by the halberd. This showed how powerful this simple slash was. The weight of the golden trident was maximized by this slash. Furthermore, Tang San used the disorder-splitting wind hammer technique. The Earth Dragon Douluo was instantly sent flying. Several rays of light from the temple's enforcement team landed on the Earth Dragon Douluo's body. They were all strengthening and healing lights. What weapon is that? The Heavenly Crow Douluo frowned as he looked at the trident. His eyes flickered with a strange light, but he did not make a move. Hulaina knew a little about it. That trident was probably some kind of divine weapon, just like the demon sickle in her teacher's hand, and the holy sword in Qian Renshue's hand. They were not ordinary items. Let's not make a move for now. Hulaina looked into the distance and said, "We can't beat him. He could send a rank 93 titled Douluo flying with a single strike, and he did not even use a soul skill. Just relying on that weapon, his abilities were not something that they could fight against. It would not be difficult for them to take the soul-hunting forest by force." Tang San smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't take it by force. The Martial Soul Hall will hand over the soul-hunting forest yourselves." Hulaina looked at him and did not say anything. Tang San walked in front of Ma Hongjun and the rest. "Brother San, you're so strong now," Ma Hongjun chuckled. "Why don't we capture these people from the Martial Soul Alliance, and let them use the soul-hunting forest as a ransom? We can forget about Hulaina. She helped us before. However, we don't have to let the rest go. Anyway, they wanted to capture us just now." Hearing this, Tang San was stunned. Then, he laughed. "Fatty, I think your idea is not bad." Xiao Wu turned to look at the people from the Martial Soul Hall. Her eyes were filled with hatred. "Anyway, these people from the Martial Soul Alliance like to bully the weak. We have been bullied by them many times. We haven't taken revenge for what happened on Sea God's Island." "Agreed." Oscar also laughed. "Originally, we couldn't do it with just the few of us, but with Little San, to capture them." Ning Rongrong was silent. She looked at Tang San and suddenly asked, "Brother San, Hulaina said that Wang Feng didn't die. Is it true?" Tang San smiled and nodded. "Yes, Brother Feng didn't die. To be precise, I don't believe that Brother Feng died. Moreover, we didn't see anything that day. I went to the Great Star Do Forest and saw Brother Feng. Speaking of which, what happened in the Great Star Do Forest was really thrilling. Let's talk about it later." Tang San's voice was filled with emotion and amazement. He seemed to be recalling something unbelievable. Then, a relaxed smile appeared on his face. "Little San, is this the good news you wanted to tell us?" Oscar asked curiously. "Not only this." Tang San calmed down. Then, he looked at Hulaina and said, "We don't want to make things difficult for you. You can leave by yourself. As for the rest of you, those who should stay will stay. Just take it as some interest for what happened on Sea God's Island. However, your biggest debt has been repaid." Chapter 895. Hulaina glanced at the pale-faced Earth Dragon Douluo, whose martial soul true body had disappeared. She shook her head and said, "Come if you want revenge. I won't go back alone. Earth Dragon Douluo, how are you?" The Earth Dragon Douluo coughed and shook his head. I'm fine. As he spoke, he glanced at Hu Laina hesitantly. They seemed to have realized something from their conversation. The Holy Lady had let these people go? But what if she was trying to sow discord within the Martial Soul Alliance? The Earth Dragon Douluo and Heavenly Crow Douluo looked at each other. They didn't completely believe each other. Especially now that Hu Laina had chosen to stay, they didn't have any doubts. Ma Hongjun and Oscar glanced at each other on the other side. It seems like these people aren't so easily fooled. Ma Hongjun whispered. I purposely said those things just now to make them suspicious of the Holy Lady. I wanted them to disobey Hu Laina's orders. I didn't expect them to be so united. They didn't suspect Hu Laina at all. Hu Laina didn't choose to leave either. The Martial Soul Alliance is much more stable than we thought. Oscar nodded slightly. The Martial Soul Alliance was much more united than they thought. Third brother, where is he now? Ning Rongrong asked at this moment. Brother Feng should still be in the Great Star Do Forest? Tang San thought for a moment. The last time he saw Brother Feng, he remembered that Brother Feng was absorbing the soul ring of that million-year soul beast. However, Tang San didn't know whether Wang Feng had successfully absorbed it. When he was chased by the four-titled Douluo, he was already very far away. Great Star Do Forest. Hu Laina was stunned. She remembered that the Pope had also gone to the Great Star Do Forest. She wondered if Teacher would deal with Wang Wu again. At this moment, Hu Laina looked into the distance and frowned. Tang San, I advise you not to mess around, it's best. Hu Laina fell silent as she said this. At the same time, the Heavenly Crow Douluo and Earth Dragon Douluo laughed coldly. Why? Third brother is here. Why are you still struggling? Ma Hongjun wasn't afraid. You still want us to leave? You are about to become prisoners. TSK. Let's see if the Martial Soul Alliance can still be so arrogant after capturing two titled Dalu. After he finished speaking, he released his martial spirit and looked at Hu Laina and the others. But at this moment, Tang San frowned slightly, as if he had noticed something. At the same time, a voice sounded from afar. She's right. You should leave now. Whoosh! A ray of sword light came from the west. The scarlet-green sword light landed in front of the crowd in an instant. In the distance, a figure slowly walked over. Seeing this figure, the pupils of the group suddenly shrank in an instant. This was because this figure was incomparably familiar to all of them. Many years had passed, but no one would ever forget that familiar outfit. Ning Rongrong's delicate body trembled as her gaze fell upon the figure. On the other side, Hu Laina was the same. Her eyes were slightly infatuated. Then, she bit the tip of her tongue and quickly recovered her mind. However, the trembling of her hands and the violent beating of her heart were unable to conceal her inner feelings. The battle on Sea God's Island. The white-clothed Popedif Wang Wu was the Martial Soul Hall's greatest enemy, Wang Feng. Although this identity had been exposed, Pope Bibidon did not announce this matter to the world for the sake of the Martial Soul Hall's reputation. When he returned, he strictly ordered everyone not to reveal any information about this matter to anyone in the Martial Soul Alliance. The white-clothed Popedif was still just Wang Wu. In addition, Wang Feng had already been killed, so the thousands of soul masters who went to Sea God's Island did not reveal any information about this matter after they returned. Otherwise, if this news were to be made public, it would cause an uproar. He didn't know what kind of uproar it would cause, and the Martial Spirit Alliance's prestige would suffer a huge blow. The Heavenly Crow Douluo and the Earth Dragon Douluo did not go to Sea God's Island, so they did not know about this matter. Captain Ma Hongjun and the others looked at the figure in the distance in shock. Although they had just confirmed from Tang San that Wang Feng was not dead, seeing it with their own eyes made them feel completely different. How did he survive under the hands of Bibidon, who was so strong that it made one's scalp tingle? Moreover, he appeared here in one piece? He looks exactly the same. He can't be an impostor, right? Oscar shuddered. He looked at the figure in the distance who was quickly walking over. In just a moment, he was in front of them. He was wearing a black robe and had taken off his mask. That handsome face seemed to have gathered all the essence of the world. That familiar charm made everyone believe that there would not be a second person in this world who had it. It was Wang Feng. "Fatty, this is the second time I see the true appearance of your monster captain, Wang Feng, and I suddenly feel that you are very ugly." Bai Qinxiang kicked Ma Hongjuan's foot. Hearing this, Ma Hongjuan's face immediately turned bitter, but then he heard Bai Qinxiang laugh softly. "Unfortunately, I just like an ugly guy like you." Ma Hongjuan's heart skipped a beat. He held Bai Qinxiang's small hand and laughed. After the 3 years of experience on Sea God's Island, the two of them had already established a relationship after narrowly escaping death at sea. "Actually, I think that for Captain, perhaps the most unremarkable thing about him is his appearance." Ma Hongjun pondered and said, "The most remarkable thing about him is his strength and ability. I don't think there is anyone in this world who can do what he did. He was able to enter the inner circle of the martial spirit palace and become the White Popediff. In comparison, his appearance is actually nothing. He is just a little more handsome than me." Bai Qinxiang suddenly giggled. "Don't flatter yourself." On the other side, Shin Lingqi also poked Oscar's shoulder. "Is it really that Wang Feng?" "It must be." Oscar pointed at the flying sword. "There is no other person in this world who can have this kind of aura other than Captain." At this time, their eyes fell on the figure. Only Ning Rongrong took the lead and moved. She took a big step forward and rushed toward the figure. The yearning for him on Sea God's Island, the pain and helplessness in her heart when she was reluctant to leave Sea God's Island, and the worry she had these days seemed to burst out at this moment. Although she had suspected the identity of the White Popediff early on Sea God's Island, she had never expressed it. Only a sentence or two occasionally revealed the suspicion in her heart. Her words were very vague, so other than Wang Feng, no one else could understand. "Wang Feng." Ning Rongrong threw herself at Wang Feng. Like a koala, she held Tower Master Wang Feng's back tightly with both hands. "I don't care. Next time, you can't leave me." "Wang Feng, I'm here to tell you that I'm planning to leave." "Rongrong, you've lost weight." Wang Feng looked at Ning Rongrong's face, which had lost a lot of weight. Although her face was still delicate, her cheeks were much thinner, and her chin was a little sharp. Her round body exuded the fragrance of a young girl, but also bloomed with a light and mature aura. Fortunately, although she had lost weight, she had also grown bigger. Where there is loss, there is gain. Wang Fengxin sighed in his heart. "Isn't it all your fault?" Ning Rongrong sobbed and hit Wang Feng. "I've been on the Sea God's Island for more than 3 years, and I've been thinking about you every day. Do you know how many times I've dreamt of you? It wasn't easy to see you no longer hiding your identity when we left the island, but we encountered those things." Wang Fengxin said. "You didn't just dream about me many times. You even lusted after my body in your dreams." When he was on Sea God's Island, he often used the golden lotus at night to heal this girl's body that was injured during training. It improved her body constitution. Naturally, he knew about this girl's dreams. "All right, stand properly. Look at yourself. Aren't you ashamed?" Wang Feng patted Ning Rongrong's back. This girl wrapped her legs around his waist. If it was Zhu Zhuqing, she would never do such a thing. "I'm hugging the person I like. What's wrong with that?" Ning Rongrong reluctantly let go of Wang Feng, but her hands were still wrapped around Wang Feng's back. She was afraid that he would run away in the next moment. When we were on Sea God's Island, Xiao Wu often ran out of Third Brother's soul ring to be intimate with him. She was just a spirit, but she couldn't resist it, let alone a living person like me. Ning Rongrong pouted. Her eyes seemed to be dyed with color and sparkled. "Rongrong, what nonsense are you talking about?" Xiao Wu said shyly and angrily. "You couldn't resist being intimate with Brother Feng." Don't compare yourself to me. Tang San also coughed a few times. This kind of thing really happened before. Although the two of them didn't reach that level, they had already touched and kissed each other. However, Tang San was more traditional. He didn't want to do that before he married Xiao Wu officially. In the distance, Hulaina looked at Ning Rongrong's coquettish and angry face and snorted coldly in her heart. Little vixen. She felt a little sour in her heart. That's enough. Wang Feng coughed a few times and let go of Ning Rongrong's tightly hugged hands. Ning Rongrong acted coquettishly and didn't let go, until Wang Feng took her hand. This made her laugh and snuggle up to Wang Feng. You guys leave here first. Wang Feng looked at Tang San and the others. On the way just now, he sensed that Tang San was coming. He was well aware of the situation after that. Okay, we'll listen to you. Ning Rongrong didn't know why Wang Feng asked them to leave. But at this moment, her heart was calm. Brother Feng, do you mean? Tang San said in a low voice. What I mean to say is that they are here precisely to delay you all. Wang Feng looked into the distance. Golden light filled the air. Hulaina and the others knew that Ma Hongjun and the others came to snatch the soul-hunting forest. They would definitely report it to the higher-up. As for what level of existence would come, it would definitely not be simple. It would not be Gui Ju or Qianjun demon fighter. The four of them should have returned to the Pope's palace at this time. But they would definitely be very powerful, titled Douluo. When Bibidan set up a defense line in the coastal city to catch Tang San and the others, although they escaped. But the Martial Soul Hall would not let them go so easily. Even if Tang San and the others escaped, they would definitely want to catch them. And the Shrek Academy was their primary target. At this time, Ma Hongjun and the others came to snatch the soul-hunting forest, which was naturally what they wanted. Hulaina and the others probably reported the news to the headquarters as soon as they knew about it. Then they sent Hulaina and the others to delay Ma Hongjun and the others and see if they could lure them all. Otherwise, when Tang San showed his martial soul, the Earth Dragon Douluo would not have attacked for no reason. What a joke, 5 black and 4 red. 400,000-year soul rings. He was a rank 93 titled Douluo, 1 level lower than Tang San. Where did he get the courage to attack Tang San? How could a titled Douluo not know the power of a 100,000-year soul ring? There was no hope of victory at all, so why would he attack so recklessly? Every single titled Douluo had cultivated for countless years, and none of them were stupid. He did this just to delay Tang San and the others. Let them stay here. In fact, Hulaina had been reminding them to leave. But it was a pity that it did not have any effect. When the others heard Wang Feng's words, they were first stunned and then suddenly woke up. Tang San looked into the distance. His perception was very strong. Before Wang Feng appeared, he had already sensed something. At this time, a loud voice came from afar. White-clothed Pope Diff Wang Wu, 9-1 start Wang Feng. Good boy, I didn't expect you to be alive under such circumstances. His voice was loud and clear, and it carried a sense of majesty. Subconsciously, Ma Hongjun and the others groaned in unison. Their expressions changed drastically, and blood rushed to their cheek. The only ones who were not affected were Tang San and Wang Feng. But Tang San felt the pressure double, and he could not help but take a deep breath. It was the aura of a peerless Douluo. 1000 Dao flow. This voice seemed to contain boundless soul power, and it penetrated the void. In the next moment, a golden figure, like a shining sun, appeared in the distance. It was 1000 Dao flow. Other than that, there were 5 titled Douluo behind 1000 Dao flow. They were the 5 titled Douluo who appeared on Sea God's Island. They were all elders or consecrated in the Elder Hall. The 3 pairs of wings in mid-air exuded a dazzling divine power. The entire sky seemed to be sealed, and only endless pressure came down like a tsunami. You guys did well. 1000 Dao Flow looked at Hulaina and the 2 titled Douluo, Tianye and Di Long. Hearing this, everyone's faces sank again. Even Tang San frowned as he looked at 1,000 Dao flow. With his current strength, it was completely unrealistic for him to defeat 1,000 Dao flow. Even if he used the Sea God's trident, he could not defeat a rank 99 peerless Dalu. The gap was still too big. Unless his clear sky hammer was full of soul rings. There's no other way. Wang Feng shrugged. Maybe God doesn't want me to die. My old man, you want to capture us? 1,000 Dao flow, he snorted coldly. He stared at Wang Feng. His eyes were also filled with disbelief. He thought that he would capture everyone, including Tang San, today. The situation in the Shrek Academy, the Heaven Do Empire, and the Setting Sun Forest would not have been so exaggerated if the Martial Soul Alliance had not secretly manipulated them. It was all for the sake of capturing the Shrek's 7 monsters, the last big problem of the Martial Soul Alliance. After all, if Wang Feng died, the Martial Soul Alliance's biggest enemy would be Tang San. This person who had also inherited a godly position was more important than the leaders of the 2 empires. But he did not expect. Not only did this kid not die, but he also appeared in this place. P.S. This chapter has more than 4,000 words. It's 2 chapters. I forgot to separate them. There are still 3 chapters. Chapter 896. 1,000 Daos Lu looked at him seriously. He couldn't forget the last scene on the Sea God's Island. He fought Bibidon and his heart was pierced. There was no chance of him surviving. Because of this, Xiao Shui almost fell out with her mother. Now, this brat had really appeared in front of him alive. From the looks of it, his aura was not bad. Back then, this kid had been able to fight Bibidong back and forth. In the end, he had even almost killed Bibidong. However, that kind of self-destructive attack had caused too much damage to his body. Furthermore, Bibidon didn't use his martial soul true body. Even so, that kid's strength was still extraordinary. 1,000 Daos Lu squinted his eyes. That day on the Sea God's Island, he had used his 9th soul skill, the Great Radiant Heavenly Hall's Judgment, when he was severely injured. He had lost. However, it was also because of that battle that he had improved a little. After all, it was rare for someone of his level to fight to that extent. Usually, he would gain a lot from that battle. Now, he was in full condition. There were also 5 titled Douluo behind him. These 5 titled Douluo weren't simple. They were the 4th, 5th, and 6th consecrated. Although the other 2 weren't consecrated, they were still elders in the Elders' Hall. They were stronger than the 7th and 8th consecrated, Qian Jun and Yen Mo. If not for the battle between Wang Feng and Bibidon, which depleted Bibidon's abilities, the Sea God's Island would have been destroyed. With their remaining strength, the Sea God's Island might not have survived. Kid, you were lucky to escape on the Sea God's Island. You won't be able to escape this time. 1,000 Daos Lu looked at Wang Feng with a half-smile. I didn't want to care about the rest, but I can't anymore. Why don't you follow me back to the Martial Soul Alliance's headquarters, and I'll let them go today. Hearing this, Wang Feng frowned. 1,000 Daos Lu had something to say. Why do you want me to return to the Martial Soul Alliance's headquarters? Bibidon should be seriously cultivating to become a god now. At this moment, Ning Rongrong suddenly pulled Wang Feng's arm tightly and whispered, Wang Feng, you can't go back. Of course, Wang Feng wouldn't go back to the Martial Spirit Palace. He didn't have time to go back. Senior, it's best to cut the crap. Tang San's expression was grave as he looked at the 1,000 streams and the 5 titled Douluo behind him. The trident in his hand was held in front of him, the core in the middle emitting a dazzling light. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Poseidon's trident. Qian Dalu snorted coldly. With a shake of his hand, a huge sword burning with golden flames suddenly appeared in his hand. Everyone was very familiar with this huge sword. It was the giant sword that Qian Rinshui used. It was also a divine weapon. Angelic holy sword. Wang Feng was stunned. Wasn't the sword already in Qian Rinxue's hands? How could there be 1,000 Dao stream? Was there something wrong with Qian Rinxue? In theory, Qian Dalu was also a great consecrator who had passed the angel examination and was qualified to use the angelic holy sword. It was just that its power was not as great as Qian Rinxue's. It was just like how Possessi could also use the Poseidon's trident, but its power was definitely not as great as Tang San's. Kid, are you very curious? Qian Dalu seemed to have seen the doubt in Wang Feng's eyes. If you want to know the reason, then come back to Martial Spirit City with me. Wang Feng shook his head. He felt that Qian Dalu was doing this on purpose. Qian Rinxue should be in the 8th test now. Was he trying to break through to the 9th test? Humph! Qian Dalu snorted coldly. His snort was like thunder. In the next moment, 9 soul rings were released from his body. At the same time, the 5 titled Douluo behind Qian Dalu let out a low roar and released their martial souls. Previously on Sea God's Island, the 5 of them had not been able to unleash their powers before the battle ended. It was different now. These 5 titled Douluo seemed to be rather unique. Their martial souls belonged to 5 different elements: wind, fire, earth, water, wood. They represented 5 different elemental martial souls: Phoenix Song, Flame Sparrow, Earthen Tortoise, Water Boa Snake, Wood Sprout Lizard. The 5 of them were all elders, and their bodies were releasing 5 different types of light. Speaking of which, these 5 martial spirits belonged to the category of martial spirits that were not very powerful. They were considered very ordinary martial souls, and they only had one element. Compared to the martial souls of the blood students from the Heaven Do Empire's 4 great elemental academies, they were much weaker. However, they were able to cultivate to the level of titled Douluo, and their fighting strength was extremely strong. This was because these 5 different martial souls could harmonize the energy of heaven and earth when they cultivated together. They could create a unique cultivation environment, and at the same time, increase the cultivation speed of the 5 of them. This was a very rare example that was discovered in the Martial Soul Hall Academy decades ago. After they cultivated together, their cultivation speed reached a very exaggerated level. Their innate soul power ranks weren't high, but these 5 types of ordinary elemental beast martial souls actually had a mysterious feeling of compatibility. This was something that other powerful elemental martial souls could not achieve. After many research, many soul masters in the Martial Soul Hall found that these 5 martial souls were all ordinary grassroots elemental martial souls, so they had such a high compatibility. The most interesting thing was that after these 5 examples appeared, the Martial Soul Hall could no longer find these 5 different ordinary elemental martial souls. Although these 5 elemental martial souls were ordinary, it seemed to be extremely difficult to find all of them at the same time. Every time he gathered 4 types, the remaining one would be nowhere to be found no matter how hard he tried. It was very strange. It was as if heaven and earth were destined to only appear in this batch of special elemental martial souls. And now, these 5 people had cooperated for many years, so they could use a powerful 5-in-1 martial soul fusion skill. It was one of the trump cards of the Martial Soul Hall. They had originally planned to cooperate with Bibidong to fight the Shanghai Divine Mountain. However, Bibidong was no longer able to fight back then. As a result, the 5 titled Douluo were unable to unleash their full abilities. Attack! 1,000 Flowing Angel Holy Sword pointed at Wang Feng and the others below. As soon as he finished speaking, besides them, the 2 titled Douluo beside Hulaina also moved. Hulaina gritted her teeth and looked at Wang Feng. She also unwillingly lit up her martial soul. At the same time, Tang San and the others also moved. Humph, I won't let you take Wang Feng away. Ning Rongrong snorted. Wang Feng, you go, I'll support you. Wang Feng shook his head and said, No, your support is not as strong as mine. Ning Rongrong, she suddenly remembered that Wang Feng seemed to be an auxiliary-type soul master at first. Now that she thought about it, when she was in the Great Soul Arena with him, Wang Feng used an auxiliary-type ability. At that time, he used a martial soul fusion skill. Later, he also used it when practicing. Later, he used less and less. Chapter 897. Those 5 titled Douluo aren't simple. Wang Feng looked at the 5 titled Douluo from the Thousand Dao sect. Honestly speaking, he didn't want to fight the Thousand Dao sect. This was because the Thousand Dao sect couldn't defeat him. However, the fact that the Thousand Dao sect had the angelic holy sword reminded Wang Feng of the Qianrenshu. He felt that something was amiss. Just as Wang Feng was in a daze, Tang San held his trident and clashed with the Thousand Dao sect. Ning Rongrong stomped her foot and snorted. Her 7th soul ring lit up. The 9 treasure star-glazed pagoda started to expand, and Ning Rongrong's body shone with a dazzling light. 9 treasure true body. Following this, Ning Rongrong's body started to turn illusory. It was as if she had fused with the 9 treasure star-glazed pagoda. Several streaks of light shot out from the 9 treasure star-glazed pagoda and landed on Tang San, Xiao Wu, and the others like falling stars. Ma Hongjun and Bai Qinxiang attacked the 2 titled Douluo beside Hu Laina. Oscar used the mirror intestine to replicate Ma Hongjun's abilities. As he was used to it, he was able to unleash more power. Shen Lingqi was brewing all sorts of beer. As for Wang Feng and Tang San, they were naturally going to deal with the Thousand Dao sect and the 5 titled Douluo. The streaks of light that represented strength and soul power landed on Tang San's body. The Thousand Dao sect and Tang San didn't use any soul skills. The angelic holy sword and the sea god's trident collided for the first time. A terrifying shockwave was unleashed and dispersed the clouds. However, even though Tang San had been strengthened by Ning Rongrong, he was still sent flying by the first collision. Xiao Wu hugged him by the waist and managed to stop him from being sent flying. The angelic holy sword wasn't as heavy as the sea god's trident. However, the difference between their soul power ranks was simply too great. Moreover, with the strength of the Thousand Dao Flow's body, it was much stronger than the current Tang San. In comparison, the Thousand Dao sect's body only shook slightly. He wasn't affected at all. This collision also brought Wang Feng back to reality. Tang San immediately knew that he was no match for this exceptional Douluo. In fact, he was far from being a match for her. Especially when the other party also had a divine artifact, but Tang San realized that the Thousand Dao sect was very unfamiliar with using the divine artifact. For example, if he poured 100% of his soul force into the angelic holy sword, he would only be able to unleash 80% of its power. Otherwise, that simple exchange of blows just now would have definitely caused him serious internal injuries. After coughing a few times, Tang San looked at the 1,000 streams with a serious look. The 1,000 Dao flow flying in the air was far more agile than him on the ground. The most troublesome thing was that the sky was not restricted by plants. He was unable to borrow the power of the Blue-Silver Emperor to deal with the 1,000 Dao stream. If he flew up as well, he would be at an even greater disadvantage. This was because in the sky, even Possessi did not dare to say that he could win against the 1,000 streams. Gravity swamp. Tang San's left arm glowed. His spiritual energy locked onto the 1,000 streams. Gravitational mire was a soul skill that Ming had obtained from his soul bone, and it was similar to his gravitational domain. The range was not big, and it could only be concentrated in a small area. However, its power was not inferior at all. An invisible gravity fell on the 1,000 streams, but the 1,000 streams laughed loudly. Gravity? It's useless. Kid, are you still not going to make a move? After saying that, 1,000 streams' soul rings lit up, and his body was covered in a layer of faint golden flames, as if he was isolated from all gravitational pressure. His figure was not restricted in any way. It was too small to restrict him in the sky. Seeing this, Tang San sighed. The golden flames on the other party's body should be a powerful control-immune soul skill. Tang San suspected that his blue-silver emperor might not be able to control the other party. The soul skill of 100,000-year soul bone was so powerful, but it was unable to control the 1,000 streams. "Old man, I'm afraid that you won't be able to withstand my attack." Wang Feng hesitated for a moment, and the golden lotus in his hand spun, and several golden rays of light fell on Tang San and Ma Hongjun. In the next moment, roar! A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Ma Hongjun's body. His entire body was shining with golden light, and even the flames on his body seemed to have turned golden. The heavenly crow Douluo and the earth dragon Douluo were shocked. This burly fatty was only a rank 82 soul Douluo before, but his aura was not much weaker than theirs now. What the hell is this? A divine soul skill gave an 8-fold increase in all attributes, as well as a powerful immunity to all sorts of statuses. They would not be affected by any control, and they would be immune to pain. Their fighting strength was naturally very abnormal. Furthermore, Ma Hongjun and the rest had trained on the Sea God's Island for 3 years, and their body's potential had been greatly increased. This 8-fold increase in combat power was barely enough for him to withstand. However, even with Ma Hongjun's body, his skin was now filled with blood, and there were thin veins and patterns on his skin. From his neck to his temples, densely packed veins protruded like earthworms. Wang Fengxin thought to himself, the divine soul skill's amplification was getting stronger and stronger. However, their bodies were unable to withstand such a huge increase in strength. From this, it could be seen that a divine soul skill was a double-edged sword. This level of amplification was very rare in the world. An 8-fold increase in all attributes was an unimaginable number. If an ordinary person suddenly had 8-fold strength, he might be able to kill his enemy with a punch, but his arm would probably be completely shattered. Even if an ordinary person suddenly had 2-fold strength, his arm would still be injured with a punch, let alone 8-fold. It was the same for soul masters. All this while, Wang Feng had rarely enhanced them. Especially after rank 40 to 50, it was even less. This was because the amplification was too strong, and with their small bodies, they could not withstand it. Ning Rongrong and the rest could withstand the first 2 to 3 times amplification with their bodies after a round of demonic training. However, as their ranks increased, the amplification became even more abnormal, and their bodies could not keep up. A divine soul skill. Only a body like his would be effective without any side effect. Hence, Wang Feng did not use a divine soul skill on Bai Qinxiang. If he used it, they would probably not be able to adapt immediately. On the contrary, it would have the opposite effect. Ma Hongjun was a soul warrior, so he was slightly better. At this moment, with his soaring aura and combined with Bai Qinxiang, he was barely able to fight back and forth with the 2 titled Douluo, Sky Crow and Earth Dragon. But following that, the injuries on his body increased. In comparison, Tang San on the other side was much better. After all, he was the heir of the sea god, and his body's potential was extremely strong. At this moment, he suddenly endured an 8-fold increase, and his entire body erupted with an intense light, and his entire body seemed to be trembling slightly. The 1,000 streams condensed slightly. With his perception, he could clearly sense that under that golden light, Tang San's aura suddenly increased by several times. Chapter 898. In the next moment, the halberd in Tang San's hand was like a rainbow. He shook it violently and gathered all his strength to attack the 1,000 Dao flow again. Although the first 3 moves were very powerful, they all needed to be controlled and stored up power. Although the first move was a control move, Tang San didn't think he could use Unpredictable Storm to restrict the 1,000 Dao flow if it wasn't a sneak attack. With the 1,000 streams in the sky, it would be too easy for them to dodge his various skills. Therefore, the simplest move was the move he wanted to use the most. Moreover, his physical strength had reached the limit of his limits. With the support of his deification power, only Tang San could barely unleash an 8-fold increase in strength. If it was any more, he wouldn't be able to do it. Unlike Wang Feng, who could increase his strength by more than 40 times when he was in his peak state, the power of the blood patterns alone could increase his strength by more than 10 times, almost 20 times. Wang Feng glanced at it. Little Three's halberd was already very strong to be able to withstand the amplification of his deification. After obtaining 400,000-year halberds, even a rank 98 titled Douluo might not be able to withstand this attack. Unfortunately, his opponent was the 1000 Dao flow. Tang San's soul power was still only at rank 94. 6 soul skill, angel's godly strength. The 1000 Dao flow roared, and his body seemed to expand several times. In the next moment, he slashed his sword towards Tang San. This was the sword. Boom! The entire space exploded with a blazing light. The sea god's trident was instantly repelled. Tang San's entire body instantly flew out. Fortunately, in his deification state, he was immune to many effects. The golden flames on the sword had the effect of purifying soul power, so it was useless against him. However, the rebound of the power caused Tang San's palm to crack, and many blood patterns appeared. This angel's godly strength could cause the 1000 Dao flow's next attack to be more than 5 times stronger. It was only one move, but it easily sent Tang San flying. The strength of a rank 99 peerless Douluo with an angelic holy sword was far beyond everyone's imagination. If it weren't for the deified soul skill, the 1000 streams could have severely injured Tang San. One had to know that 1000 Daolia's angel domain could completely suppress Tang San's blue-silver emperor domain. The huge gap in soul power caused soul masters to fall behind in all aspects. Wang Feng glanced at the 1000 streams. His golden lotus actually had the ability to raise one's soul power rank. However, this ability was too perverted. This perverted ability went both ways. If he wanted to use it on himself, he wanted to release all of his compressed soul power under the catalysis of the golden lotus. The more it catalyzed, the higher the rank of his soul power. Thus, it was closely related to the golden lotus. However, if he were to cast it on someone else, it would be equivalent to bestowing his compressed soul energy to someone else through the golden lotus. Class 8 soul force didn't appear out of thin air. If Wang Feng used this move, Tang San might not be able to reach rank 99, but he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand Wang Feng's rank 89 soul power compression. Therefore, Wang Feng rarely used the Golden Lotus's various amplification abilities on others. It was them who couldn't bear it. The Golden Lotus's abilities were more like a perfect fit with one's body. Of course, recovery and healing didn't count. That was effective on any living being. Kid, your auxiliary ability is really interesting. 1000 Dalu looked at Wang Feng. He's a rank 94 soul master. Under your amplification, I have to use my soul skill to receive it. He was naturally very clear about the changes in Tang San's combat strength. However, you're too arrogant. 1000 Dalu snorted and glanced at Tang San. Your heart was destroyed. Although I don't know how you survived, do you still have the strength you used to have? Or can you only assist others? It was normal for 1000 Dalu to think this way. After all, he had never been to the soul hunting forest. Everyone was also slightly shocked. His heart was destroyed? Oscar and the others gasped and looked at Wang Feng. How could he survive like that? How heavy was Bibidan's attack? With Xiao Wu's help, Tang San stood up with difficulty and looked at Wang Feng. He knew that Brother Feng felt that he had the strength he used to have. Otherwise, Brother Feng wouldn't have used Sea God's trident to use unpredictable storm to restrain the million-year soul beast in the Great Star Do forest. However, if what 1000 Dalu said was true, How did Brother Feng survive? His heart was gone. Tang San touched his chest. If his heart was gone, he would die instantly. There was no need to say anything. I'm just experimenting. Wang Feng looked at Thousand Dalu. Old man, you're very strong. You even used the angelic holy sword to distract me, but if I really attacked, I'm afraid. At this point, suddenly, the 5 titled Douluo behind Thousand Dalu suddenly shouted in unison. In an instant, a 5-colored light barrier suddenly enveloped the entire space. The 5 of them stood in midair in the form of their martial soul true bodies, releasing 5 different lights. 5 in 1 martial soul fusion skill. Their execution speed was very fast. In just over 10 seconds, the 2 of them had already completed the fusion of their 2 moves. Wang Feng was thinking about how the angelic holy sword in Thousand Daolia's hand was in his hands, as well as the ability and use of the golden lotus. At the same time, he wanted to see the strength of Tang San and the others. He wanted to let them fight first and accumulate a wave of experience before making a move later. He didn't realize that the 5 of them had already executed a martial soul fusion skill. There was no doubt about the strength of a martial soul fusion skill. The moment the 5-colored light barrier formed, everyone's body suddenly shook. Ma Hongjuan's martial soul true body was instantly found by a 5-colored light. In an instant, his martial soul true body disappeared. Bang! He was directly sent flying by the Earth Dragon Douluo with a slap. The rest of the people were the same. Whether it was the martial soul true body or the martial soul possession, they immediately disappeared. Ning Rongrong, who was beside Wang Feng, directly appeared from the 9 Treasures star-glazed pagoda. The huge 9 Treasures star-glazed pagoda also disappeared instantly. Ah, my martial soul seems to be useless. Ning Rongrong hurriedly helped Wang Feng, and her expression suddenly changed. Wang Feng frowned slightly, and the golden lotus in his hand also disappeared. Could this martial soul fusion skill be able to restrict the use of everyone's martial soul? If so, it was a little powerful. 5 in 1 martial soul fusion skill. 5 elements reversal barrier. Thousand Dalu sneered. With the 5 titled Douluo's domain after martial soul fusion, it can restrict the martial soul of all soul masters in the barrier. They can't use their soul power. This barrier was originally used to deal with the Sea God's Island. Together with the Bibidon, even those sea soul masters on the Sea God's Mountain are lambs waiting to be slaughtered. After hearing Thousand Dalu's words, everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. Tang San forced himself to use the soul power in his body, but he felt as if his soul power weighed 100,000 kilograms, and he couldn't move it no matter how hard he tried. It was restricted by an invisible force. It was the same for his martial soul. He couldn't even summon it. If he couldn't use his soul power, it meant that he might not even be able to use his soul bone. He could only use his body's strength. But how strong could a soul master's body be? Tang San felt that the soul power in his body was restricted, which meant that he might not even be able to wield the sea god's trident. Even the trident between his eyebrows had become dim. Vaguely, even the connection between him and the sea god's trident had become weaker. If this barrier was used to deal with the sea god's island, the advantage that sea soul masters were so proud of in the sea would no longer exist. Once they were enveloped by the barrier, they would be like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. How strong are you without your martial soul? Kid, come back with me obediently. Thousand Dalu snorted coldly and looked at Wang Feng. The angelic holy sword in his hand bloomed with dazzling light. Silence. Tang San and the others stood together and watched with solemn expressions. At this moment, Wang Feng shook his head and said, "Old man, if I don't use my martial soul and soul power, you might not be able to defeat me." As soon as he said that, Thousand Dalu was stunned. P.S. Cough cough, it seems to be a little late. Chapter 899. On the Douluo continent, what was the most important thing to a soul master? Martial soul. Without a martial soul, a soul master's fighting power was very limited. Even a titled Douluo wouldn't be able to defeat a soul Douluo if they didn't use their martial soul and soul power. The Massacre City was a very obvious example. There were many rank 70 and even rank 80 soul masters who died in the hands of Tang San, Wang Feng, and Hu Laiina. But the Massacre City was still considered good. This was because soul skills were the only things that couldn't be used in the capital of Massacre. The form of the martial soul and soul power could be used. But the 5 elements reversal barrier formed by this 5-in-1 martial soul fusion skill couldn't even release the martial soul and use soul power. The horror of this! Perhaps only Tang San and the others who were in it could understand the power of this martial soul fusion skill. It covered a large area and was completely controlled. To put it bluntly, Tang San and the others couldn't even defeat 2 titled Douluo in this state. Not to mention fighting against a strong soul master like the 1000 Dao Flow. They could probably beat them easily with just a breath. But at this moment, Wang Feng's words made their backs break out in cold sweat. Without using his martial soul and soul power, the 1000 Dao Flow still can't defeat him? Even Tang San, who knew Wang Feng very well, felt a little puzzled. Tang San quickly recalled the situation in the Great Star Do Forest. When he left, he saw it very clearly. Brother Feng was absorbing the soul ring of that million-year soul beast? He must have succeeded in absorbing it now. A million-year soul beast. What kind of concept was that? Tang San didn't know, but it was definitely unique for a soul master to improve. Maybe there was a possibility to defeat the 1000 Dao Flow? Xiao Wu, how much do you know about million-year soul beasts? Tang San asked Xiao Wu in a low voice. I'm not sure. Xiao Wu shook her head gently. A million years is the end for 100,000 soul beasts. I only know that after 100,000 years, soul beasts will experience a heavenly tribulation every 100,000 years. I'm not sure what a million-year soul ring will be like. I've never seen one before. That day was the first time I saw a million-year soul beast in the Great Star Do Forest. If even Xiao Wu didn't know about it, there was probably no one in the entire continent who knew about it. It was impossible for the master to know. But I think that even a million-year soul ring can't be used. In that case, its usefulness will be greatly reduced. Xiao Wu continued. Furthermore, I can't even use my soul power. I can't even use my soul bones, let alone soul skills. Tang San nodded slightly. No matter how strong something was, it had to abide by the rules. Unless a million-year soul ring could break through the rules and not be restricted by the 5-in-1 martial soul fusion technique. But Tang San thought it was impossible. A martial soul fusion skill formed by the fusion of 5 titled Douluo was one of a kind on the entire continent. In fact, it was indeed impossible. Even if Wang Feng had a million-year soul ring, his martial soul was sealed, and his soul power was restricted, so he couldn't use his million-year soul ring. When Thousand Streams heard Wang Feng's words, he couldn't help but want to beat him up. Stinking brat, if it wasn't for the fact that I wouldn't be here talking to you. You still don't want to admit defeat? Catch him for me. After he finished speaking, Thousand Streams didn't do anything. The 2 titled Douluo beside Hu Laiina had already rushed towards Wang Feng. A person who couldn't use his martial soul and soul power, even if he was a titled Douluo of the same level, could only be captured and trampled on. Hu Laiina, who was behind, stretched out her hand and wanted to stop them, but she knew that she couldn't command them now. Several rays of light landed on the 2 titled Douluo from the temple's enforcement team behind her. Just now, Ma Hongjun fought the 2 titled Douluo head-on in his divine transformation state, but he didn't cause much damage to them. He only blocked them. At this moment, the 2 titled Douluo, Sky Crow and Earth Dragon, rushed over. Wang Feng took a step forward, and a strong aura suddenly rose from his body. It was invisible and colorless, but it seemed to make the air a little heavier. With one step, the ground trembled slightly. The first to rush over was the earth dragon Doulu. Although he had been sent flying by Tangsan's sea god's trident and fought with Ma Hongjun, his martial soul true body had already disappeared, and he couldn't use it for the time being. However, with the temple's enforcement team recovering, his fighting strength was still very strong. Although his martial soul possession wasn't as strong as his martial soul true body, he was still very strong as he rushed towards Wang Feng with the world-edge Doulu. The combination of agility type and assault type caused the two of them to be like two torrents. They either rushed towards the ground or swooped down from midair. Sixth soul skill, subduing sea serpent. The world-edge Douluo's claws released intense rays of light as he attacked Wang Feng. Sixth soul skill, earth dragon pestle mountain. The earth dragon Douluo's body shone with a brownish-yellow light. Although he didn't have his martial soul true body, his aura was a little stronger in this boundary. Evidently, this 5 elements reversal boundary had an endless strengthening effect on martial souls with elemental attribute. It also had a certain strengthening effect on teammates. Wang Feng didn't move even though he was attacked by a strong attack. In the next moment, Wang Feng grabbed the earth dragon Douluo's dragon horn with a single hand. His hand was as quick as lightning. His other hand grabbed the heavenly crow Douluo's heavenly crow claw like an azure dragon spitting out clouds. Under the impact of the two enormous forces, only countless strong winds blew around Wang Feng, but they were unable to make him move at all. Following this, Wang Feng clenched his fists, and the two titled Douluo's auras became very chaotic. Their martial souls shook, and they felt an irresistible force coming from Wang Feng's palms. Bang bang! Wang Feng shook his wrist, and the two titled Douluo were easily flung away like shot put. The immense strength caused the two titled Douluo to be flung away. They crashed into the ground in the distance, and landed right in the middle of the temple's enforcement team. They were smashed into pieces. A huge crater with a diameter of more than 10 meters was formed in the ground. The spiderweb-like crater was a little eye-piercing at this moment. The pure strength also impacted everyone's mind. Following this, Wang Feng leaped. Suddenly, the ground seemed to be shaking. The terrifying power caused the ground beneath his feet to shatter into more than 10 cracks that could be seen with the naked eye. Ning Rongrong was so frightened that she hurriedly leaned to one side. The length of the cracks even extended to Hu Liena's side. It was obvious how strong this leap was. Even the ground seemed to have caved in. Wang Feng was like a javelin as he shot towards the Thousand Dao stream. Everyone was shocked. They looked at the cracks on the ground and couldn't react in time. Chapter 900. Even Thousand Daos Lu, who was in midair, was shocked. He raised the angelic holy sword and swung it down at Wang Feng, who had jumped into the air. What welcomed him was a huge fist. This fist seemed to be much weaker when it came from the ground. However, when this fist landed on the angelic holy sword, Thousand Daos Lu felt his arm go numb. The angelic holy sword, which weighed tens of thousands of kilograms, almost flew out of his hand. Boom! As the fist and sword collided in midair, a deafening sound of collision rang out. What a powerful force! Thousand Daos Lu was stunned. If his opponent had used his martial soul and soul power, it wouldn't be surprising that he could unleash such strength. However, the key was that his opponent didn't use his martial soul or soul power. He was able to take on the angelic holy sword with just his physical body alone. Furthermore, he had charged into the sky from the ground, so his strength would be weakened. Furthermore, his strength was weakened by his angelic domain. Thousand Daos Lu's body trembled slightly. As he circulated his soul power, he was like a mountain in the sky. It was difficult to move him. However, the holy sword trembled slightly. It wasn't enough to do anything to him. Kid, with just this bit of strength, it is far from enough. Thousand Daos Lu spun the holy sword in his hand, and looked at Wang Feng arrogantly. How vast was the sky! In terms of surface area, it was bigger than the sea and bigger than the forest. In the sky, Thousand Daos Lu was like a pillar. It wasn't comparable to the real sky, but it was impossible to defeat him in the sky without a martial soul or soul power. It's just an appetizer. Wang Feng waved his hand. The angelic holy sword was only 1/3 of the sea god's trident. However, it depended on who was using it. He had only used his physical body to punch earlier. He didn't use any other methods to increase his strength. Furthermore, his strength was weakened when he charged into the sky from the ground. After entering Thousand Daos Lu's angelic domain, his strength was weakened again. Therefore, when his last punch landed on Thousand Daos Lu's holy sword, the strength of his punch had been greatly reduced. After all, Wang Feng couldn't use his soul power. He couldn't even use his original sin's domain. He couldn't negate his opponent's angelic domain. Otherwise, with his physical strength, he could easily send a titled Douluo flying with a punch or a casual attack. It was not to the extent that the Thousand Dao stream could not be shaken. However, he would not suffer any harm. The Earth Dragon Douluo and the Sky Crow Douluo were the same. Their 6 soul skills couldn't even harm Wang Feng's physical body. Even though he couldn't use his soul power, his soul bone was still attached to his body at all times. It was just that it couldn't use the soul skills in the soul bone, but its defensive capabilities were solid. It was impossible for a mere rank 93 titled Douluo to break through his defenses. The enhancement brought by the million-year soul ring, the cleansing of the dustless glass body, and the cleansing of the chaotic divine light. Wang Feng relied on his physical body right now. Most titled Douluo's soul skills couldn't harm him. Unless it was a titled Douluo like Sword Dao Chen Xian, who was known for his offensive strength, he might be able to deal some damage to Wang Feng. However, even Sword Dao Chen Xian was unable to withstand Wang Feng's pure physical punch. However, it was a different story if it was the Thousand Dao stream. After the punch was weakened, it was probably similar to Tang San's sea god's trident. Hence, the Thousand Dao stream wasn't shaken at all. In the sky, the Thousand Dao stream was still very strong. It was impossible for him to defeat his opponent with just his physical body. At most, it would be a draw. Furthermore, his opponent had the angelic holy sword. However, Wang Feng didn't just possess his physical body. Blood patterns open! Wang Feng shouted in a low voice. He couldn't use his martial soul, and he couldn't use his soul power. However, Wang Feng still had the strength of his blood patterns, and his extremely strong spiritual power. He had too many tricks up his sleeve. At least, he could unleash a terrifying strength if he unleashed a little of them. Right now, the strength of his 7 blood patterns had already reached a peak. It was a bottleneck. Wang Feng realized that he couldn't strengthen his 7 blood patterns no matter how much he cultivated. Previously, he had absorbed the power of a god twice, which caused such a change in the strength of his blood patterns. The first time was in the Rakshasa secret realm, where he absorbed the test sent by the Rakshasa god. The second time was in the sea god's holy pillar, where he absorbed the test sent by the sea god. This directly caused Wang Feng's tests to be the first and second tests. The sea god was even more cunning. He divided the 2 tests into several options. After absorbing and evolving these 2 times, the strength of the blood patterns had increased his physical attributes to a very powerful level. Of course, it was only the increase of his physical attribute. In fact, it was equivalent to releasing the power of 7 different emotions in the blood patterns. It allowed him to enter a super explosive state. Each blood pattern had a 3-fold amplification effect. The last one was the most special. It was the key to absorbing the divine power back then. It had an amplification of more than 6 times. This kind of power was completely unbearable for ordinary people. This was because the power of these 7 different emotions would instantly crush a person's consciousness. Even if one obtained this power, they would be impacted by these emotions and become mentally retarded, or be controlled by these 7 different emotions. Only Wang Feng, who had been tempered by the Red Lotus Hellfire and had a strong spiritual power, could remain unaffected. He could unleash the power of these 7 blood patterns. Once the 7 blood patterns were activated, Wang Feng's eyes were instantly enveloped by a pitch-black light. Streaks of blood-black flames condensed and burned around Wang Feng's body. It was as if they were going to devour everything. It was terrifying. When Wang Feng moved around as the white-clothed Popetiff, he used the power of the blood patterns the most. It was the key to how he could defeat so many titled Douluo back then. On the Sea God's Island, the power of the blood patterns had been cultivated to its complete form. Now that it was activated, it was naturally shocking. The dark aura that was emitted enveloped Wang Feng like a layer of torrential demonic flames. Tang San and the others had seen it before. However, at that time, they all thought that the other party was the white-clothed Popetiff. Now that they saw Wang Feng using this magical move personally, they were all amazed. In midair, the extreme dark aura made Qian Daolia's heart skip a beat. As a possessor of the 6-winged angel martial soul, he could sense this aura very clearly. Back when Wang Feng was still in Martial Spirit City, he could sense it very clearly. Therefore, he was very dissatisfied with Wang Feng's interaction with the white-clothed Popetiff. As a holy and holy angel god, how could she be together with someone who was controlled by the power of darkness? However, along the way, especially now, such a dark power. He actually didn't lose his mind. He has complete control over this power. Chapter 901. Qian Dalu stared at the current Wang Feng, who had only released the pure power of darkness. Logically speaking, a soul master should not be able to withstand this kind of power. He had never heard of any god of darkness, only that Rakshasa god symbolized evil and darkness. Moreover, to be able to release this kind of power in the 5 elements reversal barrier. This meant that only the power of a god could be immune to all of this. Just like Tang San, if he passed the 8th or 9th exam, then even if he did not use his martial soul, he would be able to use the sea god's power. He would still be able to use the sea god's trident freely. Could it be that this kid has also inherited the divine position? Qian Daolu muttered. He could not explain this strange power. After the other party's identity was exposed, Qian Daolu also calculated the source of Wang Feng's power. It could only be the other party's 2nd martial soul, the Dark Angel Martial Soul. And it was the 12-winged Dark Angel Martial Soul. Could it be that there was another powerful Dark Angel God opposite the Angel God? But if that was the case, there would be no news of it all these years on the continent. If the other party had inherited the divine position, he would definitely have some perception. But there was none. Or rather, was it a fallen god? A holy land that did not leave behind the inheritance of a god in the Douluo continent? Qian Daolu could not help but think of this possibility. But this idea was a little whimsical. Would a god fall? Qian Daolu did not know. At this moment, Wang Feng's entire body was covered in flames. He lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and in an instant, the ground shook even more exaggeratedly than before. A circular crater with a diameter of dozens of meters under Wang Feng's feet was visible to the naked eye. A terrifying force came from the ground. Everyone, who had lost their martial souls and soul power, except for Tang San, were directly blown away. That condensed force shook their bodies, and they could even feel an intense pain. It made them extremely shocked. "Old man, take my punch." A leisurely voice that sounded like a demonic abyss instantly made Qian Daolu's hair stand on end. Wang Feng's speed had already reached its limit. This was the state of the Void Realm. With his current spiritual strength, when he activated the Void Realm state, His perception was infinitely magnified. Even Dalu in the air could not dodge any of his attack. Although it was just a simple punch. But this punch was enough to shatter everything. In the blink of an eye, Dalu roared as his soul rings rose into the air. She unleashed her sixth soul skill, Angel's godly power. The angelic holy sword in his hand blossomed with holy light like the sun. The feeling of danger kept coming from the other party. There was no hesitation, no time. However, just as he unleashed this soul skill, that fiery figure landed in front of the 1,000 streams with that terrifying fist. Under the shock in his heart, Dalu's holy sword moved even faster and slashed towards the fist. Bang! The sacred sun sword that was burning with golden flames let out a muffled sound. Rumble! In the next moment, Dalu's expression changed drastically, and he was sent flying. One had to realize that he was no longer the Dalu that had been injured by Possessi on the sea god's island. He was now a peerless powerhouse with an angelic holy sword in his hand. If Dalu hadn't used his soul power to hold on to the angelic holy sword, the punch would have sent it flying. Dalu was sent flying more than 100 meters away. The 3 pairs of wings on his back flapped crazily, and he barely managed to stay in the air. He looked at Wang Feng gloomily. There was a lingering look of shock in his eyes. With his 6th soul skill, he was sent flying with his angelic holy sword in the air? What a little monster! Dalu cursed in his heart. Dalu didn't doubt that Wang Feng had used the strength of a god. Dalu didn't believe that an ordinary soul master could achieve such a level of enhancement. The soul power within his body had been shaken by that punch and was fluctuating unsteadily. Although Wang Feng didn't use the various forms of the chaotic green lotus to enhance his strength, it was still no small matter. He even used the terrifying weight of the Xianming blood dragon armor. Although it wasn't 1,000,000 kilograms, it was at least 70 to 80,000 kilograms. It was about the same weight as when he fought with Long Xie. Dalu's martial soul and soul power were sealed. Wang Feng had many tricks up his sleeve at this moment. The crowd below felt their scalps go numb. Wang Feng resisted the Dalu with his physical body and sent him flying with one punch? Tang San knew the power of the Dalu's attack best. In his state just now, the sea god's trident was sent flying without any resistance. If he hadn't been in his divinized state, Dalu's soul skill would have been enough to seriously injure him. Is this a strength that a human can have? Ma Hongjun couldn't help but ask. This pure strength. No wonder Captain could hold the sea god's trident without passing the sea god's test. With his strength, if he touches us, won't we fall apart? That's the Dalu. They hadn't seen the fight between Wang Feng and Bibidan. Now that they saw such a terrifying strength, they were shocked. At the same time, they sighed because of the gap between them. Tang San remained silent. He should have felt that a soul master who wasn't even at rank 90 had such strength. Tang San also wondered if Brother Feng had inherited the power of a god. Otherwise, it would be too exaggerated. Old man, shall we continue? Wang Feng's spiritual intent moved, and the Xianming blood dragon armor on his body quickly disintegrated. Under his spiritual control, it formed a long sword that was a few meters long. The scarlet-green longsword emitted a soul-stirring glow. Wang Feng wore a faint smile on his face. Without using his martial soul or soul power, the strongest thing he had was the Xianming blood dragon armor. The Xianming flying sword controlled by his spiritual control was already unimaginably strong. Although he hadn't tested it yet, Wang Feng knew that even the Dalu couldn't resist his Xianming flying sword. Wang Feng's punch, just now, was to test how strong his body was after being strengthened by his million-year soul ring. Although the Dalu managed to withstand the punch, it wasn't easy. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" the Dalu snorted. He didn't believe that Lin Fan could defeat him with brute force without even using his martial soul's soul power. As he spoke, the Qian Daolia's seventh soul ring lit up. In the next moment, streaks of golden light appeared in his eyes. The 3 pairs of light wings behind his back extended in all directions. Angelic martial soul true body. Wang Feng's eyes brightened. He didn't see much of the Qian Dalu when he fought with Possessi previously. This was his first time witnessing this exceptional Douluo's power. The Qian Daolia's body was covered by balls of golden light. The wings on his back were more than 3 meters long. They were overflowing with golden light and seemed indestructible. Chapter 902. His body grew taller and taller until he was about 3 meters tall. He looked like a giant. Compared to other martial soul true bodies, this 6-winged angel martial soul didn't seem to have improved by much, but its might and aura, as well as the faint golden aura that was burning all over its body, far exceeded that of most martial soul true bodies. The strength of a god-ranked martial soul was evident at this moment. Just like Possessi's sea god, it exuded a unique divine aura. Layers of golden light rippled in the sky. With the support of the martial soul true body, the strength of the angel domain was multiplied. The ultimate form of the angel domain, heavenly holy light. When the wave-like golden light landed on Wang Feng's body, Wang Feng felt a burning sensation. It was as if he was going to be purified by the heat. Following which, the dark angel in his sea of consciousness seemed to be stimulated and suddenly roared in Wang Feng's mind. It shook Wang Feng's mind. In the next moment, Wang Feng also roared, and the 7 blood patterns on his body shone with a strange light. It was as if they were resisting the angel domain released by 1000 Dao flow. The all-encompassing golden light not only enveloped Wang Feng, but also Wang Feng. Even Tang San and the others were affected. The light seemed to be able to purify one's soul, and it carried an unparalleled strength that made it hard for everyone to breathe. Unable to use their martial souls and soul power to resist, they collapsed to the ground almost instantly. Only Tang San was sweating profusely, and he stood where he was. His body was trembling slightly, but he didn't collapse. The strength of a domain was greatly enhanced with the help of the martial soul true body. His blue-silver emperor domain was the same. Under the blue-silver emperor true body, it had the power of a myriad of things, and could attach itself to every strand of blue-silver grass within the domain's range. The elegance and strength of a peerless Douluo were perfectly displayed at this moment. Brat, back then, you took my heavenly hall's judgment. Although you broke it with one move. 1000 Dao Flow's voice was extremely loud, and everyone who heard it had the urge to bow down and worship him. However, I only had 30% of my strength back then, and I didn't use my martial soul true body. I didn't use this move under the domain. Under the influence of my martial soul true body and angel domain, the power of this move will reach its limit. This move is a divine skill. Last time, it was broken by you. This time, let's see how you break it. Divine skill. Wang Fengxin was stunned. The Divine Sea Island's judgment of the great radiant heavenly hall was truly powerful. This was because the illusory image of heaven contained a special power of faith. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it a divine skill. The 9th soul ring of the 1000 Dao flow could very well be a soul ring bestowed by the angel god. It was a super soul skill. It was similar to the sea god's 13 golden halberds. Wang Feng closed his eyes and concentrated. His mental power was pushed to the limit. In the next instant, Qian Daolia's entire body was covered in a golden light that shot straight into the clouds. In the sky, the shadows of the clouds parted, and a grand and majestic ancient palace appeared from the clouds. Wang Feng narrowed his eyes. 9th soul skill, Heavenly Hall of Extreme Radiance's trial. A voice rang out from 1000 Daos Lu's mouth as his 9th soul ring flew out from his body. The scarlet soul ring rapidly grew in size. In the end, it flew into the clouds and merged with the ancient palace. In an instant, the illusory palace suddenly became a little more solid. 2 rays of light shot out from the radiant paradise and shone directly on Wang Feng's body, as if they were the eyes of a god. Dong dong dong! An ancient sound rang out from the heavenly hall of radiance. It was as if it was judging a sinner. Wang Fengxin was shocked. He sensed a power that transcended the mortal world. It was similar to when Tang San's sea god's trident appeared and bestowed the 13 golden halberds to Tang San in the great star Do forest. At this moment, the ancient heavenly hall of radiance gave Wang Feng the same feeling. This horrifying scene demonstrated the strength and terror of a peerless Douluo. As the angel god's divine servant, Qian Dalu could also borrow the angel god's power. The angelic holy sword in his hand turned into a ray of flowing light and flew above the heavenly hall of radiance. A figure clad in golden armor and with wings on his back appeared above the heavenly hall of radiance. He held the angelic holy sword and stood in the void, exuding a peerless divine aura. In the next instant, the majestic heavenly hall of radiance suppressed the void and locked down on everything before it landed on Wang Feng's body. Wang Feng groaned. His body trembled slightly. He felt as if a 10,000-foot-tall mountain was pressing down on him, and he was instantly enveloped by the heavenly hall of radiance. The figure disappeared. That terrifying power made Wang Feng feel as if he was facing the sea god's projection in the great star Do forest. Divine skill. Is this the angel god's divine skill? Wang Fengxin was shocked. He looked around him. Within the layers of pure white ring-shaped buildings, there were many angels with wings on their backs. They stood solemnly in the void and solidified themselves. Their bodies were all illusory. At this moment, every single one of them exuded a unique aura. Even though it was far inferior to the projection of the sea god, there was not much of a difference between their numbers and their combined strength. He looked at himself again. He was on a cross, and streaks of golden light bound his body tightly. It was as if he was going to be judged. It was completely different from when he was on the sea god's island. His aura was also very different. Old man is still very strong. Wang Feng muttered. He wanted to use old man Qian Dalu as a tool to compare his strength. It seemed like he was too arrogant. Wang Feng looked around at the countless angels in the center of the heavenly hall of radiance. They were all projections, but they were very real. It was as if they really existed. At this moment, in Wang Feng's vision, at the top of the heavenly hall of radiance's projection, there was a golden figure clad in armor and holding the angelic holy sword. The angelic holy sword seemed to be countless times bigger in his hand. Could this be the angel god? Wang Feng looked at the projection. It was slightly inferior to the sea god's projection, but how could a mortal resist the divine consciousness of a god? He held the angelic holy sword in his hand, and all the angels in the heavenly hall of radiance did the same. Next, he held the sword and slashed at Wang Feng, as if he wanted to slay all the evil in Wang Feng's body. All the angels in the heavenly hall of radiance seemed to be in agreement as they slashed at Wang Feng with the countless golden swords. Xianming flying sword. Wang Feng roared out. The scarlet-green flying sword beneath his feet turned into countless swords at this moment. Wang Feng channeled his mental energy into the flying swords. Without soul power, Wang Feng could not use the 7 Killings sword skill. But it was enough for him to use his mental energy alone. Like a myriad of swords, he slashed at the countless angels around him. P.S. 3 more. Chapter 903. The flying sword formed by the Xianming blood dragon armor was like a red and green waterfall, piercing toward the countless angels in the Hall of Light. The black flames around Wang Feng's body flickered as if they were about to be extinguished at any time. Wang Feng's mind power was pushed to the limit, causing the black light to cover his eyes. This move was so powerful that Wang Feng had to take it seriously. Especially the dark angel martial soul in his sea of consciousness. It seemed to have been awakened, roaring and shaking Wang Feng's mind. The power of the 7 blood patterns shone brightly under the roar of the dark angel martial soul. From afar, Wang Feng's body seemed to be flowing with 7 rivers of blood. However, Wang Feng was now shrouded in the shadow of the great Church of Light. The outside world had no idea what was happening. Except for Thousand Dalu. Thousand Dalu's eyes flickered as he stared deeply at the majestic hall of light. This was his strongest move. The power of this divine skill was extraordinary. The conditions for using it were also extremely harsh. The last phantom had to rely on the angelic holy sword to summon it and intimidate the enemy. Dark angel martial soul, Thousand Dalu's eyes flickered. As the angel god's servant, the first thing in his heart was naturally the godhood. His granddaughter had the potential to inherit the godhood. Therefore, it was his lifelong wish to make Qian Rinxue a godhood. For this wish, Thousand Dalu did not hesitate to wipe out everything that stood in the way of Qian Rinxue becoming a godhood. To him, Wang Feng was not a hindrance. To a certain extent, he was an inspiration to Qian Rinxue. He even felt gratified when he saw that Qian Rinxue had become a godhood because of Wang Feng's death. However, he could not do that now. He was using this move to use the divine will of the angel god to check out Wang Feng's strength. What the hell is that dark angel martial soul? Was it good or bad for Xiao Shui? Thousand Dalu had made this decision the moment he saw that Wang Feng was still alive. A weak divine consciousness of the angel god was irresistible to mortals. Furthermore, the radiant heavenly hall was condensed from the power of faith. Without using his martial soul and soul power, it would be extremely difficult to break it. Staring at the scene in the radiant paradise, Thousand Dalu's pupils constricted. In the radiant heaven, countless scarlet and green flying swords swept across all of the angel projections like a long river of sunset. In an instant, the angel phantoms condensed from the power of faith were pierced into countless holes. They instantly turned into countless shadows and disappeared in the shadow of the heavens. What exactly is this kid's soul bone? Thousand Dalu was shocked. It wasn't like he hadn't seen that flying sword before. It used to be Popetiff's standard weapon. It was originally pitch black. When he was on the sea god's island, it had turned green. Now, it had turned into a scarlet-green color. The increase in power was simply too exaggerated. Those angel phantoms were not simple. They were the descendants of the angels under the angel god. They were experts who possessed the 6-winged angel martial soul. After their deaths, they gathered in the angel palace of the Elders' Hall. Thousand Dalu used this as an opportunity to combine it with the soul ring bestowed by the god to create such a powerful soul skill. Every illusory angel was an extremely powerful existence. The voices they emitted could easily shatter the judgment of the sinners in the Hall of Light. They represented the power of the holy light to carry out the judgment. Even the demigod experts who were stronger than Thousand Dalu and had more spiritual power than him would find it difficult to escape. Not to mention attacking. Furthermore, in an instant, he was able to control so many scarlet and green longswords. Just how strong was this kid's spiritual power? In an instant, all of the angel phantoms turned into dust. This move had consumed more than half of Wang Feng's spiritual power. Wang Feng rarely split the Xianming blood dragon thorn into so many flying swords. This was because the more separation, the more spiritual power was consumed. But at this moment, Wang Feng had no choice but to do so. He couldn't even relax. In the empty radiant paradise, all of the scarlet and green flying swords surged up like a waterfall. Finally, they gathered to form a scarlet and green sword that was several meters long. At this moment, the phantom of the angel god held the angel holy sword in his hand and suddenly slashed down. Several rays of light suddenly flashed in the phantom's eyes. In the next moment, the 250,000 kilograms of scarlet and green flying swords seemed to have frozen the air. The density had reached a limit. Rumble! The two collided. The angel holy sword in the phantom's hand shook violently. The holy sword burst out with violent golden flames and cut the scarlet and green flying swords. It shook into countless Xianming blood dragon thorns. Wang Feng's spiritual power shook. The golden flames of the holy sword were covered with a layer of purified spiritual power. His heart sank slightly. The dark angel martial soul in his sea of consciousness roared again. Under this boundless pressure, Wang Feng's 7 blood traces were boiling hot. It was as if they were about to melt him. The dark angel martial soul was restricted and couldn't be used. But at this moment, Wang Feng felt the 7 blood traces burning under the pressure of the angel god's phantom. An explosive power came from the blood traces. Wang Feng raised his head and looked at the phantom that was slashing down. His pitch-black eyes emitted extreme darkness. The phantom looked into Wang Feng's eyes. It was as if he could see through Wang Feng's eyes and see the dark angel martial soul in his sea of consciousness. There was a moment of hesitation. It was at this moment that Wang Feng's body burned with boiling demonic flames again. He broke free from the golden chains on the cross, stepped on it, and punched at the phantom. The end of the blood traces on his huge fist was condensed with a substantial dark flame aura. He punched the angel holy sword. Humph! In the next moment, the phantom suddenly retracted the holy sword and let out a loud sound. He also stretched out his arm and formed a fist. The fist burned with golden flame aura and directly collided with Wang Feng's fist. Boom! Under the two enormous forces, endless flame aura erupted and instantly extinguished the surrounding radiant paradise phantom. A trace of surprise flashed in the phantom's eyes. Its huge body was shaken back a little. In the hazy white clouds, a light flashed in its eyes. It stared at Wang Feng's figure, and his figure gradually faded. At the same time, at the moment when the fist collided with the angel god's phantom, endless flame light erupted in the sky. A copious amount of power made Wang Feng feel that he couldn't resist. His whole body flew down from the sky. The strangest thing was that, at the moment of collision, the golden flame on the phantom's fist instantly attached to Wang Feng's body. In an instant, it covered the black flame aura burning on his body due to the power of the blood traces. It was incomparably strange. Chapter 904. The scorching power spread throughout his body from the golden flames, but it didn't hurt his body. Instead, it carried a purifying power that devoured and purified the 7 blood patterns on Wang Feng's body. At the same time, the dark angel martial soul in his sea of consciousness was faintly discernible, but it was strangely quiet. Wang Fengxin was shocked. The angel god's shadow didn't slash down with the angelic holy sword, but used a fist to fight with him? Although it was only a shadow, Wang Feng could feel that the opponent's strength far exceeded his current state. If the dark path holy sword directly slashed down, he would probably be seriously injured. The opponent suddenly stopped and punched down, burning the golden flames on his body. It seemed that he wanted to expel the dark angel martial soul from his body. And the power of the blood patterns? What a joke! This thing was painstakingly cultivated by him in the city of Massacre. After that, he had been cultivating and going through a lot. He also devoured a few wisps of power from the Rakshasa god and the sea god to reach his current level. What if it was purified? The golden flames represented the power of extreme yang and began to cover and dissolve the blood patterns on his body. Wang Fengxin's heart gradually became heavy. These flames even passed through his body and burned into his sea of consciousness, burning toward the dark angel martial soul. This thing was the flame of the angel god's shadow. It was the flame of a god. Naturally, it wouldn't be simple. The dark angel martial soul didn't have a soul ring. How could it resist the flame of a god? Wang Feng felt that the dark aura in his body seemed to be purified. Under the burning of the golden flames, the 7 blood patterns seemed to have lost their previous power. What was even more terrifying was in his sea of consciousness. Wang Fengxin's heart tightened. The dark angel martial soul was burning with golden flames, but its entire body was pitch black. It looked very strange. It was exactly the same as his current state. If this goes on, my martial soul won't be purified, right? Wang Fengxin was a little speechless. The actions of the angel god's shadow were really too strange. He could have seriously injured him, but he only used a punch to cover himself with the golden flames. His goal seemed to be to purify the power of the blood patterns on his body and the dark angel martial soul. It seemed that the dark angel martial soul was related to the angel god. Enemies? Wang Feng wasn't too sure. The dark angel martial soul was given to him by the system, and he didn't know its origins. He had to rely on himself to activate it. As for the angel god, Wang Feng was even more clueless. After all, he was still a god. And not just any ordinary god, but a god who controlled the power of the sky. The dark angel was bathed in golden flames, just like Wang Feng himself. He was also bathed in the golden flames. F***ck. This won't do. Wang Feng thought to himself. I don't care if you are an enemy or not. You want to purify this dark angel martial soul that I have painstakingly cultivated? Dream on. His powerful will merged with the dark angel martial soul in his sea of consciousness. Wang Feng closed his eyes. Time seemed to have stopped. Wang Feng did not expect that this battle would attract the attention of the angel god's divine will. He had never expected to encounter such a situation. However, the first appearance of the dark angel martial soul seemed to indicate that this was going to happen. The two opposing energies seemed to be mixing, struggling, devouring, and purifying at this moment. Vaguely, Wang Feng felt the dark angel's martial soul grow dimmer and dimmer. However, it didn't roar like before. Instead, it was very quiet. It was as if it already knew its fate. At the same time, under the purification of the golden flames, half of the 7 blood tattoos disappeared. Only the remaining half was still disappearing. However, to Wang Feng's surprise, although the blood tattoos disappeared at the purified end, they turned into golden tattoos. It was extremely strange. F***ck. This angel god, don't tell me he wants me to inherit his power? Wang Feng quivered. Purifying the dark angel martial soul into the 6-winged angel martial soul. Did he also take a fancy to me? What's wrong with these gods? They already have inheritors, but they are still half-hearted. Do they want to cultivate 2 accounts? If one is destroyed, the other can be used as a guarantee? Wang Feng was just guessing, but he felt a little helpless. However, the dark angel martial soul was stronger no matter how he looked at it. He didn't want to be purified like this. Moreover, the dark angel martial soul was only a martial soul after all. Its strength was limited. Wang Feng could even feel that the dark angel martial soul seemed to be devouring and absorbing the golden flames, and the power of the 7 blood tattoos was the same. It was just like when it absorbed the divine power of the Rakshasa deity and the sea god's test. Unfortunately, the flames of this angel phantom were far from simple. It was not as simple as a few strands of divine power. This thing was like the light of the sea god emitted by the sea god himself. It was impossible for a martial soul to absorb it all. But at this moment, in the sea of consciousness, Wang Feng seemed to have thought of something. His spiritual power turned the chaos green lotus, and then approached the dark angel martial soul. The moment the light cyan chaos green lotus approached the dark angel martial soul, in an instant, the golden flames paused slightly. Then the chaos green lotus bloomed slightly, illuminating the dark angel martial soul. In the next moment, the dark angel martial soul suddenly burst out with a burst of momentum, and its whole body quickly absorbed the golden flames. Wang Feng was slightly startled. The three martial souls in the Sea of Consciousness had always been in a triangular shape. Wang Feng rarely used his spiritual power to control it in order to avoid accidents. But now it seemed to be quite useful. Under the light of the Chaos Green Lotus, the Dark Angel Martial Soul seemed to be able to quickly absorb the special golden flames emitted by the Angel God. It could help the Dark Angel Martial Soul to absorb it? The Chaos Green Lotus in the Sea of Consciousness was surrounded by 9 circles, which were the soul rings. At this moment, as the soul rings shone, the Dark Angel Martial Soul absorbed the golden flames burning all over its body at an extremely fast speed. In just a moment, the absorption was complete. Wang Feng only felt a pure and holy power rising from the Dark Angel Martial Soul. 2 extremely contradictory powers, strong and weak, merged into the Dark Angel Martial Soul, causing the originally black light to emit a faint golden glow. Wang Feng was a little dumbfounded. What the hell was this? It was really absorbed? The Dark Angel Martial Soul was actually absorbing the power of the Angel God? In terms of the form of power, these two were completely independent of each other. The Dark Angel Martial Soul represented darkness and depravity, while the Angel God emitted the holy power of light. This golden flame was definitely not an ordinary divine power. This represented a special kind of energy that could purify the power of his blood mark. It was obvious. This can be King absorbed? Wang Feng knew that this was probably due to the Chaos Green Lotus. The Chaos Green Lotus was the origin of all things. Although it was only a martial soul, it should not be difficult to help the Dark Angel Martial Soul absorb the golden flames. Chapter 905. One had to know that the Dark Angel Martial Spirit could also absorb the golden flames. However, it could not absorb so much of it. At this moment, the Dark Angel Martial Spirit was still absorbing the energy contained within the golden flames. At the same time, Wang Feng discovered that as the golden flames were absorbed, an extremely strange scene appeared on the 7 blood marks on his body. Half of the purified golden marks and the other half of the blood marks formed 2 opposing energies that interweaved on Wang Feng's body. It emitted a bright and dark aura. A faint green light still enveloped the Dark Angel Martial Spirit, causing it to rapidly fuse with the golden flames. Gradually, Wang Feng discovered that the Dark Angel Martial Spirit had changed. How should he put it in his Sea of Consciousness? The first thing that changed was the black wings behind the Dark Angel Martial Spirit. After the 7th blood mark was cultivated, it evolved from 12 wings to 14 wings. It had already reached its limit. However, half of it was now dyed with a faint gold color. It looked incomparably strange. At the same time, even the body of the Dark Angel Martial Spirit was intertwined with black and gold. A strange energy was being emitted from the Dark Angel Martial Spirit. Could it be that the Dark Angel Martial Spirit has really fused with the golden flames? Wang Feng was startled. If such contradictory energies were to fuse, he did not know what kind of changes it would bring to the Dark Angel Martial Spirit. Could it be a mutation of the Martial Spirit? Wang Feng took a deep breath. In an instant, he opened his eyes. The left eye was pitch black, but the right eye was faint gold. At this moment, an illusory figure suddenly erupted from Wang Feng's body. It was not a martial spirit. It was just an illusory figure of an angel formed by leaking energy. However, this illusory figure was emitting an extremely ancient aura. Half of it was faint black and the other half was faint gold. There was no holy aura, nor was there any light aura. There was only the ancient aura of an angel. Dalu Lu had been watching Wang Feng all along. He had a very clear understanding of the battle. The moment the radiant paradise shattered, the huge illusory figure changed its attack method and punched Wang Feng. Then, Wang Feng's body burned with golden flames. Dalu Lu could clearly see it. Naturally, he knew about that flame. It was the symbol of the angel god, the true sun flame. It could purify and burn all evil and dark things. Clearly, the angel god's divine will had discovered the dark angel martial soul in Wang Feng's body. It believed that it was ominous, so it wanted to use the true sun flame to purify the dark angel martial soul. The Thousand Dao stream felt that this was naturally the best outcome. Because of this kid didn't have any conflicts with Little Snow. Otherwise, when Little Snow became an angel god, how could a person with the dark angel martial soul be together with Little Snow when they had two opposing powers? Although this kid's dark angel martial soul wasn't simple, it was still very powerful. However, the current situation seemed to have completely exceeded the expectations of the Thousand Streams. Looking at the ancient angel on Wang Feng's body that was half black and half gold, the two opposing forces fused together, and an invisible energy surrounded Wang Feng's body. It actually made the Thousand Dao flow have the urge to prostrate themselves in worship. How was this possible? Thousand Dao Lu's body trembled slightly. That feeling was getting stronger and stronger. Even the dark angel Wuhan on this kid's body had only made him a little scared. Perhaps his opponent's martial soul was of a higher quality than his six-winged angel martial soul. But now, he actually had the urge to kneel down and prostrate himself in worship. Even when facing the angel god statue, the Thousand Dao stream didn't have such a strong urge. What kind of angel is that? Could it be that this kid's dark angel wasn't purified? The Thousand Dao stream looked at it with a dumbfounded expression. The trembling transmitted from his martial soul to his soul made him slowly kneel down. That kind of intense suppression, it wasn't just the Thousand Dao stream. At this moment, Tang San looked at the illusory figure behind Wang Feng in the air, and the space between his eyebrows trembled. What is that? Tang San looked at it in astonishment. The rest of the people had already climbed down. The great radiant hall pressed down, and a huge aura enveloped the entire place. This kind of deity rank combined with the power of the martial soul, and that strange illusory figure of the angel god, even they couldn't withstand it. Tang San knew that the illusory figure was probably a wisp of the angel god's divine will. It was enough to see how powerful this move was. To be able to trigger a wisp of the true god's divine will, it was not weaker than when the illusory figure of the sea god appeared to teach him the 13 golden halberds. Tang San was slightly shocked. Could it be that Brother Feng has also inherited the divine position? But what kind of deity is this? Isn't the divine position of the angel god inherited by Qian Renxue? Back then, on the sea god's island, Qian Renxue crushed the 7 monsters. Tang San remembered very clearly that the Qian Renxue emitted the aura of the angel god. In this world, there couldn't be 2 angel gods. Moreover, Tang San felt that the aura and majesty emitted by the illusory figure of the angel god was even stronger than that of the sea god. What was more strange was that it didn't seem to be the aura of a deity. It was indescribably strange. Tang San felt very strange and puzzled. The Thousand Dao stream was confused and frightened. Wang Feng also didn't know what was going on. He only felt that the dark angel martial soul in his body seemed to have evolved and mutated. After absorbing the golden flame of the angel god, it became another kind of angel martial soul. The 7 blood traces on his body were formed by the intertwining of black and gold. They contained tyrannical power. 1 black and 1 gold in his eyes were like 2 different energy vortexes. They could instantly attract people's attention and make them addicted to the 2 different vortexes. The change seemed to be very big. Wang Feng had never expected such a change. In any case, the dark angel martial soul was not purified, and the power of the 7 blood traces did not disappear. On the contrary, they were much stronger. It seemed that he couldn't control them at will. The dark angel martial soul fell into a state of silence. Then, the illusory figure of the angel martial soul on Wang Feng's body disappeared. The pupils in his eyes returned to normal, and the 7 blood traces on his body dimmed. Wang Feng frowned slightly. He stood on his flying sword and looked at the 1,000 Dao stream in the distance. Old man, what are you doing? Why are you kneeling to me? Even if you lose, you don't have to do this, right? In the distance, the 1,000 Dao stream knelt in the void. When he heard this, he suddenly woke up and stood up. His face was extremely ugly. Just now, he did it subconsciously. Under the influence of his martial soul, he couldn't control himself and knelt down. He didn't know what was going on. Shut up. Do you think I want to kneel? Brat. The 1,000 Dao stream was so angry that his face turned red. After thinking for a long time, he sighed and said, Forget it. I won't make things difficult for you today. You can go now. I wanted to bring you back, but I didn't expect you to be so strong. Even such a powerful move could be neutralized. What was even stranger was that even the angel god's sun true flame could not purify this brat's dark angel martial soul. This could only mean that he and Xiao Shui were not fated. As the 1,000 Dao stream spoke, he waved at the 5 titled Douluo and turned around. He sighed and said in a voice that only Wang Feng could hear. Sigh, Xiao Shui's life is tough. She was about to pass the 9th test, but because of someone she is about to fail. Child, Grandpa will come back to send you off. After saying this, the 1,000 Dao stream left quickly. Wang Feng, P.S. It seems to be a little late. Chapter 906. The moment the 1,000 Dao flow left, the 5 titled Douluo in the air also dispersed their martial soul fusion skill. As the 1,000 Dao flow left, the space finally returned to normal. The 5 of them were still in the air, outside the barrier, and they were all in an invincible state. They couldn't move at all unless they dispersed their martial soul fusion skill. The power of their martial souls returned to their bodies. For a moment, they got up from the ground and patted the dust off their bodies. In the distance, Hulayina looked at Wang Feng with a complicated expression and left with the 2 titled Douluo and the law enforcement team. Wang Feng looked at the 1,000 Dao flow and cursed the old man in his heart. He must have said something like that. But how could Qian Rinxue fail the 9th test? Combined with the appearance of the angel god's shadow and the mutation of his angel martial soul, Wang Feng felt that he might need to make a trip to Martial Spirit City. At this moment, the barrier disappeared. Wang Feng found that the angel martial soul in his sea of consciousness was still unusable. The 7 blood golden patterns on his body were the same. The golden flames were created by the angel god. Under the illumination of the chaotic green lotus, they merged. This means that the angel martial soul can't be used now. Maybe I have to find the Qian Rinxue to know the situation of the angel god. Wang Fengxin thought. The angel martial soul increased his combat strength greatly. If he couldn't use it, he couldn't use the 7 blood golden patterns that he had painstakingly cultivated. This meant that he couldn't use the original Sin's domain. This series of effects was in fact weakening his strength. Wang Feng couldn't accept this. After thinking for a moment, Tang San and the others came over. Brother Feng, what happened just now? Tang San asked tentatively. Although the 1,000 Dao flow was beaten away by Wang Feng, the final situation was really confusing. The angel god's shadow that appeared and the angel that appeared on Brother Feng's body were extremely strange. I don't know. Wang Feng shook his head. The 9th soul skill of the 1,000 Dao flow is a divine skill, similar to your golden trident. It combined the opponent's 100,000-year soul skill and other special powers to form a move. I'm considered lucky to be able to receive this attack. The main reason was that the chaotic green lotus could help the dark angel martial soul absorb the golden flames of the angel god. Otherwise, Wang Feng's dark angel martial soul would have been completely purified. Luck. Tang San smiled bitterly. Big Brother Feng, your luck is really strong. I feel that the power of that move is stronger than the other 3 moves. There is an excess of pressure. That's because he used it in the sky. Wang Feng thought for a moment and said, if you use those 3 moves on the sea, they would be even more powerful. Furthermore, 1,000 Dao Flow's soul power is much stronger than yours. Tang San nodded. Wang Feng, what exactly did that 1,000 Dao Flow say to you in the air? Ning Rongrong ran to Wang Feng and asked with a puzzled expression, I feel that this martial spirit palace's 1,000 Dao Flow doesn't seem to hate you. Just now, when he asked you to go back, it seemed like he wanted to recruit you. Aren't you a spy and traitor of the martial spirit palace? Also, I remember that day on the Sea God Island. Why did that Qian Rinxue want to find? Speaking of this, Ning Rongrong looked at Wang Feng with a puzzled expression. Everyone was stunned and felt that it seemed to be the case. That 1,000 Dao Flow seemed to only say that he wanted to capture Wang Feng. But he didn't seem to hate Wang Feng. Wang Feng coughed twice and said, the internal forces of the martial spirit palace are more complicated. The Elder Palace and the Pope Palace are two different forces. I am a spy in the Pope Palace, which is still a threat to the 1,000 Dao Flow. I, a big threat, left the Pope Palace, so he couldn't be happier. Why would he hate me? As for that Qian Rinxue, of course she wants to kill me. Wang Feng said seriously. I became the white-clothed Popediff undercover and deceived him, affecting their subsequent plans. She is extremely resentful towards me in her heart, so she naturally wants to find me as soon as possible and cut me into 8 pieces. In this aspect, he is completely different from his grandfather. Is that so? Ning Rongrong nodded, looked at Wang Feng and giggled. Then I was overthinking it. I thought that Qian Rinxue wanted to find you and let you go that day. I thought she liked you, and his grandfather wanted to capture you back and make you his grandson-in-law. Wang Feng. That shouldn't be possible. Tang San said, Brother Feng has lost the face of the martial spirit palace, and that 1,000 Dao Flow is even more unlikely to do so. It's impossible to recruit Brother Feng, because doing so would cause the martial spirit palace to lose its dignity. It's even more impossible for him to be their grandson-in-law. Bibidan almost killed Brother Feng in the Great Star Do Forest, so why would he agree to 1,000 Dao Flow recruiting Brother Feng into the martial spirit palace again? I think the 1,000 Dao Flow wants to capture Brother Feng and torture him. That's right. Wang Feng nodded. Little San is right. Ning Rongrong nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Let's go back first. Wang Feng looked at the others. We shouldn't stay here for too long, in case the 1,000 Dao Flow comes back. They weren't in good condition now. It could be said that they didn't have any advantage in this battle. The strength of the martial spirit alliance wasn't something that a few people could fight against. Captain, how have you survived these past few years? On the way, Ma Hongjun chuckled and asked, It must be hard to be a spy, right? It must be hard to be ordered around by that Pope Bibidan, right? You're always on tenterhooks every day, after all, you accidentally leaked it. Yes, it's very hard. It's very tiring. Wang Feng said. Wang Feng wasn't wrong about this. Beside him, Tang San also solemnly said, Brother Feng, you've suffered these past few years. It's not hard, it's not hard. Wang Feng coughed a few times. It's okay, Wang Feng. You won't be tired now. Ning Rongrong leaned on Wang Feng's shoulder and said softly, You have us by your side now. Yes, after saying that, Ning Rongrong held Wang Feng's hand and secretly scratched it, blocking Wang Feng's arm in front of her chest. With a red face, she whispered in Wang Feng's ear, I'll make you very comfortable. Cough cough. Wang Feng looked at Ning Rongrong in surprise. This girl has really grown up. Look at those eyes, they're so tender and beautiful. So pure and innocent. Are you that greedy for my body? Wang Fengxin found it funny. That won't do. I'm not tired enough. The revolution hasn't succeeded yet. Wang Feng said with a heavy face, We still need to work harder. Work harder. Figure out the situation of Qian Rinxue, and strive to defeat Bibidan 1 year later. End everything. That's right. Tang San agreed. The Martial Spirit Alliance's strength is getting stronger and stronger. You've seen the situation today. If this continues, I'm afraid that the two empires and our forces will collapse in at most a year. I have a plan in mind now. When we go back, I'll discuss it with the teachers. If this plan succeeds, we might be able to collapse the Martial Spirit Alliance in one fell swoop. Chapter 907. Hearing this, Wang Feng looked at Tang San with some interest. Little Three seemed to be a little different. What kind of plan could he have that could destroy the Martial Soul Alliance in one fell swoop? The others were also a little curious, but seeing that Tang San was keeping them in suspense, they didn't ask much. Wang Feng, when we were on the Sea God's Island, did you come to find me at night? Ning Rongrong was not interested in Tang San's plan. At this moment, she only wanted to whisper to Wang Feng. Why do you ask? Wang Feng's arm moved slightly as he felt Ning Rongrong's maturity. He couldn't help but think to himself that Rongrong was getting older and older. Is it because I used the Golden Lotus to heal her injuries and improve her physique when we were on the Sea God's Island? Does the Golden Lotus have such an effect? Although fully activating the Golden Lotus could improve one's physique, it consumed a lot of energy and time. The body of a soul master was different from that of a soul beast. The body of a soul beast was very strong, especially a 10,000-year soul beast. Using the power of the Golden Lotus to heal and transform them, there was no need to worry about their bodies exploding. Although Ning Rongrong was much stronger than ordinary soul masters, she was still a lot stronger than ordinary soul masters. Compared to a soul beast, Wang Feng had to be careful when using the Golden Lotus. If he accidentally used too much of the energy contained in the Golden Lotus, Ning Rongrong wouldn't be able to bear it. Just tell me if you did or not, Ning Rongrong said coquettishly with a red face. She wouldn't say that she often dreamed of herself and Wang Feng doing it at night, of course not. Wang Feng shook his head. I don't believe you. You must have looked for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have those dreams. As soon as Ning Rongrong said that, she knew that she had let it slip. She couldn't help but punch Wang Feng coquettishly. Rongrong, what dream? Bai Qinxiang asked curiously. Ma Hongjun chuckled. What else can it be? Rongrong must have missed Captain too much and dreamed of him. Maybe he's still. Pa. As she spoke, Ning Rongrong's face turned even redder. She extended her hand and shot a Zhuge Divine crossbow at Ma Hongjun. However, with Ma Hongjun's current strength, this thing had no effect on him. He stretched out his hand and tried to grab the arrow. However, the next moment, the crossbow bolt suddenly turned around and slipped away from Ma Hongjun's hand like a slippery fish. Then, it aimed at Ma Hongjun and stopped in his mouth. Gulp, Ma Hongjun opened his mouth and gulped. He looked at Ning Rongrong and smiled awkwardly. Rongrong. Fourth brother, I was wrong. I apologize to you. Bai Qinxiang also smiled and said reproachfully, You are really something. How can you say this directly? How embarrassing! Ning Rongrong coldly snorted as the crossbow slowly descended. Rongrong, did you learn this move from Captain? Ma Hongjun held the crossbow bolt. How did you do it? Ning Rongrong smiled proudly. Using spiritual power to control it. When I used the crossbow bolt just now, Wang Feng used his spiritual power to teach me. He even hid it from me. I didn't control it just now. But I've learned it now. Hearing this, Ma Hongjun understood. Wang Feng nodded slightly, intending to teach Ning Rongrong the method of controlling the psychic energy. He had been researching this spiritual power control technique ever since he entered the extreme north. Then, he slowly became stronger. He had also summarized a detailed set of technique. He could practice this technique while practicing his spiritual power. However, when he thought about how Wang Feng's Xianming blood dragon spike could transform into countless forms, he was probably the only one. Because the Xianming blood dragon spike was a soul bone, Its shape was unique, and had a strong connection with Wang Feng. This technique was very helpful to an auxiliary-type soul master like Ning Rongrong. In particular, Ning Rongrong could control it while distracted. In the future, she would be able to fight soul masters who could close in on her. Her spiritual power was also very strong. Wang Feng pointed at Ning Rongrong's forehead and whispered, "You dreamed of me, but it doesn't mean that I came to see you. Your evidence is useless. I don't care. If I think you came, you must have come." Ning Rongrong acted shamelessly. Wang Feng looked at Ning Rongrong and whispered in her ear, "I did come to see you, and I happened to see you in your dream." Hearing this, Ning Rongrong's face turned red. She whimpered and hung on to Wang Feng's body. "No, you definitely didn't see me. You didn't see me in my dream." Ning Rongrong hammered Wang Feng's chest with her hands. When she felt Wang Feng's arms around her, she slowly relaxed and obediently leaned on his shoulder. "Chen Xiang, why don't you let me hug you too?" Ma Hongjun looked at Bai Qinxiang enviously and rubbed his hands together. "I don't want to." Bai Qinxiang blushed and pushed Ma Hongjun away. Oscar laughed out loud. "Fatty, you're trying to force it. How can Chen Xiang agree? My Lingqi is better. Let me hug you." Shin Lingqi glared at him and held Oscar's hand. "You're not forcing it, are you? You want to hug me just because you want to? No way." Oscar was speechless. On the other side, Xiao Wu smiled and snuggled into Tang San's arms. "Brother, I'll let you hug me. They're so jealous." Xiao Wu wrapped her arms around Tang San's neck, which made Tang San blush. However, looking at Ning Rongrong and Feng Feng's smiling faces, Tang San sighed. "I don't know how Feng Feng survived in the martial spirit hall all these years. It must have been hard for him. He must have recognized Hu Liena when he was in the city of massacre. At that time, he must have planned to infiltrate the martial spirit hall." Thinking back, Tang San sighed. He thought of going undercover in the martial spirit hall at that time, and he succeeded in the end. It was incredible. In this world, Feng Feng was probably the only one who could do it. Yes. Xiao Wu recalled the time in the Great Star Do Forest when they were attacked by the ghost Douluo at a critical moment. It's impossible for others to succeed, and it's impossible to replicate. Tang San smiled and said, "No one in this world can be as powerful as Feng Feng. Now that he's back, I don't think he'll leave." The group rushed back to Heaven Do City. With their speed, they arrived at Heaven Do City in less than an hour. They didn't go back to the Shrek Academy first. Instead, they went back to the Tang sect. The Tang sect's scale was comparable to the Blue Lightning Overlord sect and the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile sect. In just a few years, they had the support of the two sects and the Heaven Do Empire's imperial family. The Tang sect's hidden weapons had made a name for themselves on the continent. However, the Tang sect's hidden weapons weren't sold casually. They were sold at high prices, and the Tang sect's friendship was required to sell them. The Heaven Do Empire was the biggest buyer of the Tang sect's hidden weapons. Chapter 908. However, the Tang sect's hidden weapons were severely restricted. This was because most of the regions belonged to the Martial Soul Alliance. Even the most famous blacksmith city, the capital of Heptagold, belonged to the Martial Spirit Alliance. The materials needed for the Tang sect's hidden weapons were all found by the disciples of the Tang sect's Agile Hall. After returning to the Tang sect, the teachers of the Shrek Academy, the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile sect, and the Blue Lightning Overlord sect quickly gathered in the Tang sect. "I didn't introduce the four hall masters to you before." In the Tang sect's main hall, Tang San smiled at Tai Tan, Niu Gao, Yang Wudi, and Bai He. The four of them used to be single attribute masters. After joining the Tang sect, they became the hall masters of the Tang sect's four halls. Back then, Tang San had spent a lot of effort to convince them to join the Tang sect willingly. Several years had passed, but the four hall masters didn't look much older. This is the Tang sect's Grand Elder. Tang San pointed at Wang Feng and smiled. When the Tang sect was established several years ago, Brother Feng wasn't here. Now that he's back, he'll be the Tang sect's only Grand Elder. In the Tang sect's main hall, besides the 4 elders, there were many elite disciples who had just joined the Tang sect in recent years. They all looked curiously at the young sect master and the great elder of the Tang sect. The Tang sect had developed rapidly in the past few years, but most of them were students who had graduated from the Shrek Academy. Although Tang San wasn't here, they still knew about him. After all, they had all come because of Tang San's fame as the Shrek's 7 monsters. However, he wasn't too sure about the mysterious great elder of the Tang sect. Not to mention the elite disciples, even the 4 hall leaders exchanged glances with one another and glanced at Wang Feng with a confused expression. Hee, sect master, they don't know much about the captain. Ma Hongjun laughed. Why don't you tell them about the captain's glorious deeds? Wang Feng coughed a few times. At that moment, several voices came from outside. I heard that Wang Feng is back? A refined voice sounded from outside. Before Tang San could make the introduction, he exchanged a look with Wang Feng and then looked outside. Outside the house, Ning Fengji was dressed in white and looked very elegant. Other than the white hair on his temples, he still looked very young. The sword Douluo and the bone Douluo followed behind him. Ha ha! I didn't believe you when you sent someone to report to me. Come, let me see where that brat Wang Feng is. He fought with me more than 3 years ago, and then disappeared. Yu Yuanjin's loud voice rang out from outside the house. On the way back, Tang San went to report to the humans from the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrant sect. Beside Yu Yuanjin were the Master, Lu Erlong, Flender, Zhao Wuji, and other teachers from the Shrek Academy. They all looked surprised. On the other side, Dugu Bo hurriedly rushed in through the door. Little monster, little madman, I heard that you're back? Let me see what you've become after disappearing for so many years. 3 groups of people walked in from outside the Tang sect's gate, adding to the liveliness of the Tang sect. However, after so many years, they still had smiles on their faces. There was a hint of worry between their brows. Clearly, these years hadn't been smooth sailing. Under the pressure of the Martial Soul Alliance, even the 2 empires hadn't been doing well. Tang San, Xiao Wu, and several hall masters of the Tang sect walked out and welcomed them with smiles. Little monster, you're more mature and handsome than 3 years ago. Dugubo looked at Tang San and smiled even more. Even I can't see through you? Dugubo had broken through 1 rank in the past 3 years and reached rank 95. He could be considered a transcendent Douluo. At his level, it was almost impossible for his soul power to improve. However, it wasn't easy for him to break through 1 rank in 3 years. However, when he sensed Tang San in front of him, he felt as if there was a layer of faint blue light around him. He couldn't sense anything. Tang San, I haven't seen you in 3 years. Don't tell me you've already become a titled Douluo? The sword Douluo stared at Tang San and said. As soon as he said this, countless gazes were stunned. Among them, the one with the highest cultivation was naturally the sword Douluo, a rank 97 titled Dalu. However, he couldn't see through Tang San at this moment. It could only mean that Tang San's level had reached a very high level. Impossible. When he left, he was only rank 60. 3 years later, rank 30. Lu Erlong nudged the master. The master was silent. He just looked at his most outstanding disciple quietly. Tang San took the lead to walk in front of the master and said respectfully, Teacher, I didn't disappoint you. I've indeed crossed that threshold. I've become a titled Doulu. Xiao Wu, I've also been resurrected. Everyone exclaimed when they heard that. The 4 hall masters of the Tang sect were the most shocked and pleasantly surprised. The sect master had become a titled Douluo? What kind of talent and strength was this? A titled Douluo in his 20s, there was probably no one in the entire Douluo continent, right? Wang Fengxian thought that this was an opportunity. When Tang San came out of the Sea God's Island, he was only rank 80. However, De Ming's sacrifice made him directly become a titled Doulu. It wasn't like fighting a million-year soul beast directly, and it was so difficult and dangerous. Teacher, it's not just third brother. We've all reached rank 80. Ma Hongjun and the others also walked over and chuckled. When we came back a few days ago, none of you were in the academy. I heard from the disciples that all of you went to the setting sun forest. What? Flender walked over and stared at Ma Hongjun with his round eyes. His voice was still trembling. Fatty, you've really reached rank 80? As his only direct disciple, Flender didn't expect Ma Hongjun to jump more than 20 ranks in just 3 years. He had become a soul Doulu. Dean, we might be at a higher level now. Oscar also walked over with Xin Lingqi with a smile. We're all around rank 82 now. Zhu Qing is a little higher at rank 84. When Little 3 left the Sea God's Island with us, he was rank 85. Among the 9 of them, except for Xin Lingqi and Bai Qinxiang, who weren't Soul Douluo yet, the rest had become Soul Douluo. Bai Qinxiang was now over rank 70, and Xin Lingqi was over rank 60. She was close to rank 70. In fact, Xin Lingqi had improved the most because her level when she entered the Sea God's Island was very low. Therefore, she had improved the most. Flender. The teachers looked at each other. Looking at the group of people, they all sighed in disbelief. The student had surpassed the master. Chapter 909. We're really old. Flender looked at Ma Hongjun with a gratified expression. Your soul power has completely surpassed ours. Bai He, the hall master of the Tang Sect's Nimble Hall, looked at his granddaughter with a gratified expression. Ma Hongjun and the others had just returned, and they hadn't even met Grandmaster yet. Along the way, they had asked around about the Martial Soul Alliance and heard about the situation in the academy. They hadn't even rested for a day or two before they rushed to take back the soul-hunting forest. It could be said that they hadn't even returned to report. The Sea God's Island can actually help you improve so much? Grandmaster exclaimed. It's really a magical place. It's indeed incredible. Ning Fengji glanced at everyone. The Sword Douluo and Bone Douluo had heard of the Sea God's Island before, but it was really terrifying to be able to help a soul master improve so much in just 3 years. Dad, it's all thanks to Wang Feng. Ning Rongrong let go of Wang Feng's hand and ran to Ning Fengji excitedly. Before she came back, she had written a letter to her family in advance. Although they didn't see it, Ning Fengji and the others knew that Ning Rongrong was back. Wang Feng, Ning Fengji's gaze landed on the young man behind Tang San, who was so handsome that it made him sigh in amazement. He was just wearing an ordinary black robe and had a smile on his face. You're Wang Feng. Ning Fengji looked at Wang Feng and rubbed his eyes. Really? Doesn't Wang Feng like to wear a mask? Indeed, when Wang Feng appeared 3 years ago, he also wore a mask. No, that's not right. Why do I feel that your appearance resembles that of the Pope? Flender looked suspiciously at Wang Feng, his face darkening. Back then, it was the Pope in white who disguised himself as Wang Feng. I can still clearly remember his appearance. Ning Fengji was stunned when he heard this. He looked at Wang Feng again. In an instant, the Sword Douluo and Bone Douluo released their powerful auras and stared at Wang Feng. They remembered clearly how White Pope Diff had pretended to be Wang Feng and attacked the 7 treasure glazed tile sect. At this moment, when Flender mentioned it, he suddenly recalled that the white-clothed Pope Diff, whom he had only met once and had revealed his true appearance once, wasn't it this young man before him? The auras of the 2 titled Douluo filled the entire courtyard, and the 4 hallmasters were extremely alert. For a time, everyone was jittery, and every bush and tree was an enemy. The name of the white-clothed Pope was something that none of the people present would ever forget. However, Wang Feng only smiled and slightly released his aura. That supreme aura, which seemed to be one with heaven and earth, instantly dispelled the auras of the two titled Douluo. With his current dustless glass body, after being washed by the primal chaos divine light, it had reached a terrifying level. Otherwise, Long Xie wouldn't have asked him to become the king of soul beasts. With his aura, most soul beasts would reject him or even try to get close to him. It was a kind of aura that was in harmony with nature. Any kind of pressure seemed to be insignificant in front of Wang Feng, unable to form any pressure. Everyone present was instantly affected by this aura. The two titled Douluo even lost their desire to attack. They couldn't help but be shocked. Wang Feng rarely released his aura. He had no choice. He was already so handsome. If he released his aura, it would be too eye-catching. Aya! Ning Rongrong looked at Wang Feng. Her face was red, and her eyes seemed to overflow with tears. Grandpa Jian, Grandpa Gu. White Popediff is Wang Feng. He wasn't an imposter back then. He's the real person. After hearing this, everyone fell silent. Their minds went blank. What does that mean? They didn't react. However, Master seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Wang Feng in shock. Brother Feng entered the martial spirit palace as a spy a long time ago. When Tang San felt this aura, he was secretly shocked. This aura seemed to be a bit more unique than the vast aura of the sea god. However, he smiled and said, later on, Big Brother Feng became the Pope of the White-Clothed. So, the Pope of the White-Clothed has always been Big Brother Feng. Speaking of this, Tang San was also secretly laughing. Brother Feng must have been ordered by the Bibidon to pretend to be himself as the White Popediff. He was acting as himself. No wonder he could act so well. They were all fooled. When everyone heard this, their jaws dropped to the ground. How is this possible? Douluo couldn't help but curse. Little lunatic, is it true? The one who defeated me with a flying sword in the martial spirit palace in Heaven-Do City was really you? Wang Feng smiled and nodded. Immediately after, Wang Feng's mind moved, and a scarlet-green sword light suddenly condensed from his body. With a swoosh, it floated in the air. F***ck, this is the feeling. Douluo quivered. You little lunatic, you're quite good at acting. Even those people from the martial spirit palace were fooled? Even we didn't notice it. The others also looked at each other and looked at Wang Feng in shock. Of course. Ning Rongrong giggled. Looking at the surprised look on everyone's face, she felt honored, especially when her father was also looking at her in shock. It made her very happy. If even you couldn't be fooled, then Wang Feng would have been exposed long ago. Ning Rongrong walked to Wang Feng's side and thought, fortunately, Zhuoqing isn't here now. Wang Feng is mine alone. If that's the case, don't tell me that you were the one who gave us the news back at the Seven Treasures Glaze sect? Ning Fengji recalled and was speechless. I was wondering how it could be so coincidental that Wang Feng could give us such important news at such a critical moment. No wonder the martial spirit palace's operations were all ruined by you. Ning Fengji shook his head, shock still lingering on his face. So you're the white-robed Popediff. The martial spirit palace's operations couldn't be hidden from you at all. So, the sword Douluo frowned slightly and stared at Wang Feng. When we were at Vast Sea City, I fought with the white-robed Popediff and used it to break through. You didn't do it on purpose, did you? Wang Feng nodded. I sensed your aura at that time and thought you were at the pinnacle of rank 96, so I fought with you. You should be able to break through, so I did it. Hearing this, the sword Douluo's expression changed. In the end, he shook his head with a wry smile. You little brat, old poison, and I thought we had tricked you. I didn't expect you to have guessed it long ago. Tang San and the others were also stunned. They recalled that when they intercepted the wolf bandits, it was indeed the case. At that time, they were still complacent and thought they had tricked the white-robed Popediff, but now the truth was revealed. However, Ma Hongjuan's heart skipped a beat. He remembered that several flying swords attacked him and Bai Qinxiang at that time. It allowed his relationship with Bai Qinxiang to reach a higher level in the midst of a crisis. At that time, it was very critical. At that time, he was still glad. "Captain, you're too awesome. You even assisted me at that time?" Ma Hongjun quivered. "It seems that Captain's flirting skills are far superior to mine." P.S. 3 more updates. Now that he thought about it, the more Ma Hongjun thought about it, the more surprised he was. Chapter 9-10. He wasn't the only one. Everyone else was also shocked when they recalled what had happened. They were amazed that Wang Feng could easily use the identity of the white-clothed Popediff and infiltrate the martial spirit palace without giving himself away. "We were able to improve so much on the Sea God's Island this time. It's all thanks to Brother Feng," Tang San said solemnly. In fact, it was the other 7 monsters who had improved more. Under the pressure of passing through the light of the Sea God in the first test, their potential was squeezed out to the fullest extent. This led to a huge improvement for them in the next few tests. Otherwise, it would be impossible for those low-level ones to break through to the Soul Douluo level. However, Tang San didn't explain in detail about the Sea God's Island. The Sea God's Island had a rule that nothing could be revealed to the outside world. As the successor of the Sea God, Tang San didn't want to break the rules of the Sea God's Island. Of course. Although Ning Rongrong looked happy, she pouted and said, "But at that time, we were destroyed by Wang Feng. Dad, you don't know. I hated that white-clothed Popediff to death at that time." "Only by suffering can one rise above others," Ning Fengji said. "If it weren't for Wang Feng's destruction, not to mention Tang San, you might not be able to break through to the Soul Douluo level now." Ning Rongrong giggled. She thought to herself, Zhu Qing was the calmest at that time. She must have discovered it long ago. But how did Zhu Qing discover it before me? Ning Rongrong had been thinking about this question for a long time, but she couldn't figure it out. Rongrong was just complaining. Tang San said with a smile. In fact, she gritted her teeth and didn't think of giving up at all. Wang Feng nodded slightly. Rongrong's personality was like this. She was soft on the outside but strong on the inside. It was impossible for her to give up. She said it was possible, but she couldn't. She was so angry. In fact, she was very determined. "So, today I officially announce that Brother Feng is the great elder of the Tang sect." Tang San looked at the 4 hall masters and the many elite disciples. Bai He and the other hall masters naturally did not dare to object. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the other party's strength and identity were second to none in the entire continent. Tang San hadn't told them what had happened on the Sea God's Island. "Little Feng, since you've come back this time," Ning Fengji looked at Wang Feng, coughed a few times and said, "Then how do you plan to explain to me about Rongrong? You guys aren't young anymore." Wang Feng, "Oh, Dad, 3rd brother called you here for something else." Ning Rongrong blushed as she looked at Wang Feng. "Why are you talking about this now?" "Then I'll have to ask him." Ning Fengji smiled. "Feng, when do you plan to give me an answer?" "I'll give it to you next time," Wang Feng said. "When is the next time?" Ning Fengji asked. Logically speaking, now that Wang Feng was so outstanding, Ning Fengji felt that his precious daughter was not worthy of him. What should he do? In the beginning, Ning Fengji had agreed to this matter with both hands and feet. But now, Ning Fengji was most worried that this huge gap would make it difficult for the two of them to be together in the future. The strong usually had to reach a higher realm. Ning Fengji could not guess the upper limit of someone like Wang Feng. Even for someone like Tang San, Ning Fengji could not imagine the upper limit. But his daughter's upper limit was to become a titled Dalu. How could she keep up with his footsteps? If she couldn't, she would either be a widow and wait bitterly, or she would leave quietly. Regardless of which, Ning Fengji did not want his precious daughter to suffer. This kind of worry made Ning Fengji want to get an answer from Wang Feng. In fact, even if he got an answer, Ning Fengji felt that they could not escape from these two outcomes. 1 year later, Wang Feng said slowly. 1 year later, I'll give you an answer, Rongrong. Wang Feng knew Ning Fengji's concerns. It was also his own concern. Okay. Ning Fengji nodded slightly. 1 year was very short. Now that the martial soul alliance was imminent, they might not be able to last a year. But now, Tang San and Wang Feng had returned. It was not impossible to break the current situation. As for why it was 1 year, Ning Fengji did not know, and did not want to ask. But when Ning Rongrong heard this, she looked at Wang Feng in surprise. Is he going to marry me in a year? Ning Rongrong lowered her head, and her mind was filled with longing. At this moment, Tang San's expression turned serious. Everyone, let's move to the side hall. I have something important to discuss with all of you. Everyone nodded slightly and followed Tang San into the main hall of the Tang sect. Little 3, you're back. I'm sure you know the current situation of the Martial Soul Alliance. Douluo sighed. This time, the Martial Soul Alliance's decision was extremely correct. Before the Snowy Night Emperor died, he lamented that there was no way to break Pope Bibidan's move. The most important thing is that the Martial Soul Alliance has a righteous cause. Righteousness was the most important thing to countless people in power. Waging war and raising the flag of rebellion required righteousness. But it was clear that the Martial Soul Hall, which established the Wuhan Alliance, had a righteous cause. The purpose of the alliance was to promote the development of the world of soul masters and promote the progress of the continent. If you did not join, you would be obstructing the progress of the world of soul masters and the continent's progress and development. It was fine if you did not join, but you would also enjoy the benefits bestowed by the Martial Soul Alliance. They used a slow and steady method to absorb the strength and territory of the two empires. The Martial Soul Hall's strength surpassed the two empires in all aspects. I know this. Tang San pondered for a moment, then looked at Wang Feng. But this is where the Martial Soul Alliance's ambition lies. They want to unify the continent. Actually, if it was another power that wanted to unify the continent, it would be different. Maybe it's like what Brother Feng said that day. The benefits of unifying the continent outweigh the disadvantages. The Tang sect and I will not participate in the struggle. But the Martial Soul Hall can't. Bibidan can't. Tang San's voice was very firm. If they were to unify the continent with Bibidan's ambition, it would be difficult for us to have any space to live. Wang Fengxin thought that this was the knowledge brought about by hatred. There was nothing he could do about it. Actually, if he defeated Bibidan, then what Tang San said would not exist. However, what Little 3 cared about the most was hatred. There was hatred for Xiao Wu, his mother and Xiao Wu's mother. This might not be related to Bibidan, but it was closely related to the Martial Soul Hall. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.